radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Welcome, Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. Yeah, man. How you doing? How you doing? One of our officers gave him a donut. Today's Wednesday, August 4th, 2021. "217 days into the new year. Only 148 days left. We are live from a bunker somewhere in the middle of nowhere. It's a total undisclosed location, but it is beautiful. Yeah, man. It's goofing around today over at the Making Contact campus. Mark Sims, Captain Ron, Mara. Having a great time with my avatar. It's such an amazing place. Making Contact, the Making Contact campus. Anyway, so I was playing guitar. Yeah, took one of the guitars down. In fact, I took the dime bag. I serenaded everyone today with some shredding licks. But you weren't there. It was cool, too. I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA, the planet. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? How you doing? What an amazing week. Man. Whitley Strieber last night. Mark Sims. Tonight, Peter Robbins. Tomorrow night, Fader night. Man, it's absolutely great around here. Love my job. Mark Sims last night. Wow. And that was the only time in the history of this show where we blew through overtime, blew through a commercial break, and continued the show for an additional 30 minutes and still ran out of time. I felt like, and I was, man, my adrenaline, it was go time for me. And I can only imagine, I want to thank Mark Sims last night for that conversation. And emotionally, obviously, that's not easy to go through. And, so you do that for 3.5 hours like we did last night, 3 straight hours of conversation. And there was a part of me that just wanted to just keep going. And that was my selfish side. And it just was not the right thing to do. But could you imagine? So, yeah, there's got to be a part 2. And I just hung up with them on the phone a few minutes ago. And wow. I mean, just a few minutes ago, too. So that was just incredible. So thank you, Mark Sims. Absolutely incredible. But tonight, Peter Robbins is here. And Peter's such a great writer, a great journalist, and has been a part of the UFO community for so long, and a very stand-up guy. And there's there's a part of me that, I doubt that, well, I can't say I doubt, but I can't imagine myself ever writing a book. And I've said that many times. I have so many requests there's no reason for me to write a book. But the discipline that it takes, and when I read a good book, and I've got a lot of them, and when I read a good book, one of the things that always hits me is, how does somebody do this? How does somebody have the mental discipline to put these words together, page after page after page? And it's so great that I am inside of the book and I can't stop reading it. That's impressive to me. It is. I don't know how, and I don't know how people can do it. And I have such great respect for writers, and Peter Robbins is one of those that I have just great respect for. And I'll tell you what, Nick Redfern, that man is a prolific writer. He has a gift, and there are some out there that are going to go, man, Nick Redfern wrote another book. I'm like, yeah, that's impressive. And they're all good, and when you're really, really good at it, I suppose it is maybe not easy, but a lot easier for them than it would be for me. I'm just impressed with that. So in a little bit, I went through my mind, and I put a little list together of some of my favorite books on UFOs. And I was just reminded, I left 1 off, 2 off. Oh, man. 3 off. Oh, my list is already done. All right. We'll see what happens. All right, I posted up today. A couple of things are coming up. I've got a very, very busy conference season that has been delayed from 2020 and 2021. That is starting to kick up again. There's a lot of things happening out there. First up, and I talked about this last night briefly with Mark Sims, but the night before with Whitley and Danny Sheehan, and is August 18th through the 22nd. It's 5 days. 18th, 19th, 20th, 21, 22. 5 days. Making Contact. If you go to makingcontact.com, you can see the list of speakers. And Eric Weinstein, I'm still blown away by that. And Chris Mellon and others. Okay, so go and look at this amazing list. Now, the conference is virtual. Now, you have to understand what I'm saying. This is in a world. It's like a video game. And it's an incredible complex. It's called the Making Contact Campus, and it's an island. There's all kinds of things to do and walk around and check out. So over the next couple of days, all of that will be finalized. I'll get the final links up. I went and designed my avatar today and walked around the island, which I've done this a few times, but today I did it by myself. And it's absolutely insanely great, unbelievably cool. So we've got a whole thing planned for all of you to go in advance of the conference, get in there, create your avatar, walk around the island, jump on one of the boats, drive the boat around the island, go check out the beach. Check out I told you, there's a basketball court, the nightclub. Go and walk around and look at things and figure things out. Go find the auditorium. Walk into the auditorium. Look around and see what's there. It's insane. It's insane. All right? So we'll have all of that. So you have 7 days to get all set up and figure things out, because this conference kicks off August 18th, and you want to be able to go. You want to get in there. Now, check this out. So this auditorium, it's an auditorium, right? I am going to be able to, from the podium, look out at the audience, and you are going to be sitting in there. I am going to be looking at 2,000 avatars. I'll be able to point at you. You'll be able to raise your hand and ask me a question. That's right. I'll be able to, it's crazy. I'll be looking out at the audience, and if you get up and walk out, I'll see you. It's like that. It's insanely great. It is so cool. I had so much fun today, and it's fast. It's smooth, and my avatar looks like me. It's trippy. It's really trippy, and you can interact with your video camera and your microphone and anyway. Okay, so enough of that. That's coming up August 18th. I had so much fun today doing that. I was playing guitar, right? Video camera right here, right? Yeah. And so that's August 18th. Coming up the month after that, September 17th, 18th, and 19th, Conscious Life Expo is doing a dual city, dual country conference. Los Angeles, London. Los Angeles, London. Okay, you need to go to Conscious Life Expo. I put all of the banners up. Oh, okay, over for making contact, Jimmy Save 100. Uppercase, caps, all caps, Jimmy Save $100 off the ticket price. That's a 5-day event, and you are going to be gamified for 5 days. It's going to blow your mind. Man, that's a really good value. And then, okay, so Conscious Life Expo, two cities. I'll be hosting live in person at the LAX Hilton. And that's going to go on, I think, for 8 or 10 hours that day, every day. And then we switch over to London from the Hilton in London. And so the live stream will go here, and then boom, live stream picks up in London. And if you want to go round the clock for 16 hours, you can. Also, from London, they can watch LA before. It's a really, really cool, great event. Now, and that's if you don't want to attend in person, you've got the streaming. But you can also attend in person, right? And you can also do both. You can attend in person, then go home, stay up all night, and hang out with the London crowd. Also, there's the replays and everything else, okay? So this is a big event. Two cities, London and the United Kingdom, ConsciousLifeExpo.com. I got the banners up for that. The promo code for that is Jimmy. All you Fadernauts with the promo code Jimmy, 20% off. Get your tickets now. And that's just incredible. Then it rolls around after that. November, I'm doing Starworks USA, Laughlin, Nevada, at the Aquarius Resort and Casino in Laughlin. That's coming up in November. And wow. And then it just rolls around after that. February is Conscious Life Expo again, back at the LAX Hilton. And just lots of, and of course, conferences going out through 2022. Also, the websites are done. You can now register for our trip to Egypt, which is in March. And that's 2 weeks. That's 2 weeks in Egypt. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. A 5-day Nile cruise. You get a stateroom. That's right. Nile cruise. Man. Oh, man. So that's coming up. So it is just going to be very busy and a lot of fun. So there you go. Okay, that's part of my day, was putting all of this stuff together and finishing things up today. It's absolutely incredible that you spend a year and a half inside and finally, woohoo, get back out. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. JChurchRadio. Hashtag F2B is the sandbox on Twitter. Let's see. Everybody's hanging out. There's Ken. There's Cassandra. There's Brian. There's Brad Harris. I like that. I like that, Brad. I like that. I like that a lot. I like that a lot. Eric Awakening, man. Let's see what his... Is that real? Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Is that like a speaker stand with a phone on the top? Bluetooth? Man, that's cool. That's cool. I'm gonna save this picture. That's pretty cool. Save as... What do I save this as, Eric? What do you even call that? Let's see. I'll call that Jimmy phone stand. That's pretty cool. That's going to get posted. Jimmy phone stand. Saved. Stole it. Email us, jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. Let's get to the breaking news. Pete Parada, the drummer for Offspring, said he was ousted from the band, kicked out, because he refused to get a COVID vaccine despite having already had COVID and acquiring natural immunity. Offspring has not commented on Parada's statement. Parada has played with the group since 2007 and is featured on their 4 most recent albums. And he's saying, you know what, I get it. The band's got their priorities. I don't have any negative feelings. There you go. But got kicked out. Also, today, members of the United States Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee released a bipartisan report that states that 7 out of 8 federal agencies that they reviewed still have not met the basic cybersecurity standards needed to protect the sensitive data they stored and maintained. The 8 departments are the Departments of Homeland Security, the State Department, the Transportation Department, Housing and Urban Development, the Agriculture Department, Health and Human Services, Department, and the Social Security Administration. Only one department, that's of Homeland Security, was found to have an effective, that was the 1 out of 8, cybersecurity system in place in 2020. That's your breaking news. Let's get the show cracking. Happy birthday to today, Billy Bob Thornton. Yeah. What's that new TV series? He's 66. What's that new TV series he's got out? Billy Bob. Me right now. It's getting away from me. He's got a new series out. I think it's on Amazon. It's not Bosch. That stars Bosch. What's the one with Billy Bob? Man, it was really good, though. Okay, anyway. What makes Billy Bob on my list? He's got a Fender tattoo. Keyboardist, one of my favorites of all time. Max Middleton today is 75 years old. And if you want to check out Max at his best, in my opinion, the Jeff Beck Group, The Orange Album, Max Middleton owned it. Max Middleton today, 75 years old. Sepultura guitarist Max Cavalera today is 52. Our dead guy's birthday today is, I need a moment of silence, please, Robin Crosby. Yep, 1960 to 2002, died at the age of 42. Robin, as we all know, was one of the original members of Mickey Rat, right? Play on Mickey Mouse. Mickey Rat, later shortened to Rat. He would end up co-writing many of Rat's songs and hits, including Round and Round, Wanted Man, and Lay It Down. The album Out of the Cellar went to triple platinum. I think it went higher than that, but they're saying it's triple platinum. I think that thing must have gone 10 platinum. But anyway, in 2001, Robin publicly stated that he had AIDS and had been HIV positive since 1994. That was in 2001. He had also been in and out of the hospital for 8 years dealing with back problems and health issues associated with HIV. His weight ballooned. He was 6'5". I've met Robin and hung out with him many times. Big guy, 6'5", and he ballooned to over 400 pounds. And it was just sad. His pancreas shut down, and it was just bad. It was bad. Robin died a year later after that public statement in 2001, on June 6th, 2002, at his home in Los Angeles of a heroin overdose. Incredible. Happy birthday, Robin Crosby. I went today and listened to, and you can do this on YouTube. Just look up YouTube, Round and Round, Robin Crosby isolated guitar tracks. And it'll pop up right there. And go and listen to just his guitar on one of the greatest songs in rock history, right? Round and Round. And it was always, especially for us guitar players back in the 80s, it was a difficult lick. The whole song was difficult. Warren DeMartini and that guitar solo. But Robin, that rhythm guitar is difficult. It just is. And it sounds easy. And no, it doesn't sound easy. He makes it sound easy. I went and listened to those isolated tracks today, which I've heard before, and it just reminded me that they were out there. So I went and listened to them, and man, it's the sound, it's a thing, and it's perfect. Robin Crosby, just absolutely incredible. So sad. On this day in history, OTD, 1892. Lizzie Borden's parents are found hacked to death in their Fall River, Massachusetts home. Yeah, that's a good picture of Robin with the flying V. Yeah. That dude was great. I was a great player. Thank you, that Michelle. Michelle coming in strong. Fader fact. All right. The guy that founded Tropicana orange juice. Tropicana. His name was Anthony Rossi. He founded Tropicana in 1945. He was an Italian immigrant who arrived into this country with $25 in his pocket and didn't speak English. There you go. You got to love this country. And that is your Fader fact. Tonight, Peter Robbins is back with us. I'm very excited about the show tonight. Peter is, I will always consider him our ufologist at large. That's Peter, our journalist at large, our author at large, our editor at large. That's Peter Robbins. Peter Robbins is with us. He'll be joining us in a couple of minutes. And I got to hit this River Moon coffee. Man, I just rambled. I didn't say anything for 20 minutes, and now I'm out of time. I said nothing at all. Let the critics come in. Jimmy Church, 23 minutes, 43 seconds, said nothing. Robin Crosby, talked about that, round and round. RiverMoonWellness.com. Brian. Thanks for the years of OJ. That's classic. All right, now, so Peter Robbins, author. Lots of great authors out there. And I could name a few right off the top of my head. Don Schmidt, right? Tom Carey. I already mentioned Nick Redfern. Great writers. They know how to write a book. And going back to my early days of ufology and what Don Schmidt meant to me back then. Oh, man. Stanton Friedman. You know. These books coming in, and it was really funny. I had a stack, and it seemed like it just happened in a couple of years, but I had a stack of Roswell books. Aztec, Corona, Roswell, stacked this tall. And by the time, different writers, and by the time you get to the 10th one, the 15th one, you're starting to realize, didn't I just read that before? I did. Have I read this book before? I feel like I've read, did I already read this? I love it, right? And so I was going through some of my books here, some of my older ones, and things that meant a lot to me over the years. And I've got a list of 20 here, but that have to be read. And one of them that I didn't read until I think 3 or 4 years ago. I want to thank Laura London for pointing this out early on. I hope she's listening. Flying Saucers, A Modern Myth of Things Seen in the Sky by Carl Jung. It is a necessary read. The Report on Unidentified Flying Objects by Edward J. Ruppelt. An absolute necessity. Listen to everything that I'm saying. Write this down. The Mothman Prophecies by John Keel. is an absolute necessary read. The UFO Experience by J. Allen Hynek, an absolute necessary read. A Crash at Corona by Don Berliner and Stanton T. Friedman, an absolute necessary read. Above Top Secret by Timothy Good, an absolute 100% must read. The Andreessen Affair by Raymond E. Fowler, an absolute necessary read. That book will 100% guaranteed crazy dreams. The Andreessen Affair. Read it. It's an amazing book. Communion by Whitley Strieber. I know, it's so obvious, but it is a necessary read. And if you haven't read it, read it. Finally, the movie is out now. It's popping up on Amazon after being gone for a long time, but now you can go and check it out. The Interrupted Journey by John G. Fuller. That book, because it was written at the time of Betty and Barney Hill, so you're getting it in real time. It's a very historical narrative, as is the Andreessen Affair. Betty Andreessen and what her and her family went through, and the way that the book is written, it's incredible. It's incredible. So I have other ones out there, like I mentioned Communion. There's another book called A Report on Communion by Ed Conroy. Is something that you should check out. Did I mention the Messengers of Deception by Jacques Vallée? Right? These are books that you have to have in your library, and you have to read them. You just do. Above Top Secret by Timothy B. Good is essentially a collection of documents and a collection of firsthand accounts. And I learned more in that book at that time. This was early 90s, somewhere in there. I don't remember the exact year, but it was early 90s. And it became such an important book for me. And I remember Richard Dolan telling me the exact same thing. It was like the first book, and for me, it was the only book for a long time. Above Top Secret, and it's 30 years old now. It's got to be 30 years old. It's got to be. This is Fade to Black. Speaking of authors, we got one of the best tonight with this. Peter Robbins is here, and author at large, editor at large, ufologist at large. That's Peter Robbins. He is with us. Very excited. He's got a great show that's on Monday nights right before Fade to Black, of course. Meanwhile, here on Earth, we're going to talk about all of that. Who is Peter Robbins? I want his best stuff tonight. We're going to do all of that. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. I'll be right back with Peter Robbins.
This is Nicole Church, daughter of you-know-who, and you're listening to Fade to Black on JimmyChurchRadio.com and the Game Changer Network.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio. Introducing the Game Changer blend from Rivermoon Coffee that delivers a customized blend made specifically for the Fadernauts. If the game is rigged, change the game. It's a bolder cup with some bite. Game Changer is the coffee of choice for those that prefer an organic dark roast that is slightly lighter and milder, but it's still dark. with wild notes of pecans and chocolate with a rich, balanced, full-bodied cup that is roasted to perfection for a great coffee to start your day, as an after-dinner coffee or anywhere in between. Artisan, small batch roasted to perfection. USDA certified organic, all River Moon coffee is freshly roasted and packaged in the USA. Just go to rivermooncoffee.com or click on the banners over on our site and use the promo code F2B Blend for 15% off of your order today. rivermooncoffee.com.
This is the only way forward.
This is Fade to Black. Make contact. KGRAradio.com.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can get our podcast for just $2 per month. All you have to do is click on the podcast banner over at jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, folks. It's troubling times, and fear is pushing emotions, which in turn pushes health the wrong direction. Do you ever get an ache because life is uneasy? Try Life Change Tea at getthetea.com. Life Change Tea works on your digestive tract, helping to move food through quicker and comfortably so your health is spot on. Life Change Tea may not help with world issues, but it will help with your digestive issues. A glass a day helps keep the intruders away. So, change your life today. Log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. If your health game is off, get on by ordering Life Change Tea. Getthetea.com. And while you're on our site, look around at the great non-GMO organic supplements. And if you're a sales shopper, go to our specials page and see what's for you. I've been drinking the tea for 12 years and I'm sure glad for its health benefits. Again, that's getthetea.com. Getthetea.com. The tea that makes you go.
Fadernauts. When you think about the future of our country and where we're headed, do you wonder about the food supply? I do. Disruptions in the food supply chain could be disastrous, and they usually occur with little warning. That's why the smartest thing you can do today is to stockpile emergency food, water, and other essentials. I personally recommend My Patriot Supply. They're the nation's largest emergency preparedness company, serving millions of customers for more than a decade. In fact, they're the only source my family trusts for our preparedness plan. You should too. Right now, save 20% off a full 4-week supply of delicious meals that provide 2,000 calories a day. Saving 20% helps too, doesn't it? Especially now. So go to preparewithjimmy.com and get ready. That's preparewithjimmy.com. There's no time to lose. Do it now.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, The Planet.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Massey. You're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, how do we top last night's show? I mean, is that possible? Yes, it is. It is. So the pressure's on Peter Robbins tonight. Peter Robbins is here. Such mad respect for Peter, and we're going to have a great conversation tonight. And I'm going to jump outside of Peter's comfort zone. I'm going to do it from the gate. All right, so that's my promise to Peter. I'm watching him now. You guys can't see him, but he just fidgeted. He's kind of like, you know, and I get that. Can't wait for this. He's an investigative writer. He's an author, lecturer whose writing and research are focused on the subject of, you know, of course, UFOs and their implications to humanity. He's appeared on a guest on way too many shows. I don't have the time to get into all of it, but Ancient Aliens, History Channel's Britain's Roswell, Unsolved Mysteries, Good Day New York, The O'Reilly Factor, take that off. We're going to take that one off. Fox New York, The Real Roswell, Nat Geo, of course, Sci-Fi Channel documentary, UFO Invasion at Rendlesham,
And the good stuff is he hosts right before Fade to Black, Meanwhile Here on Earth. That's Monday nights right here on KGRA. I would like to welcome back to Fade to Black, and I'm going to say this out of the gate, is Peter Robbins. Peter, where have you been, man? It's been too long.
Yes, you got me out of my comfort zone. Mostly tucked away in central New York State on my vast, fully fenced-in compound here in central New York, just outside of Ithaca, home of Cornell University.
Yes, and you're not that far from Sir Dolan.
That's right. An hour and a half as the crow flies or as the car drives. And we commute fairly regularly back and forth.
Yeah. He's such a great guy. But it's not about Richard Bleep and Dolan tonight, Peter. It's about you. It's about you. And I'm going to discuss a few things. First off, I don't think most people know that Peter was a folk singer in the Warehouse District of New York at one time. And he's looking at me like, what? But it was really funny because you went, wow, the guitars. And I stopped right there. And I thought about your family's musical background. And I can we talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely.
Can we talk about your sister?
Yes, absolutely.
Tell everybody who your sister is and absolutely blow their minds.
Yeah. My sister Helen performed under the name of Helen Wheels. I believe it was before the McCartney song came out, but she was part of the first wave of the whole New York punk movement. Had her first band hitting the stage, the Helen Wheels Band, at CBGB's in 1976, and opened and grew closer to a lot of no-names like the Ramones and the Talking Heads and Blondie and Iggy and
Television,
Richard Hell and the Voidoids,
yes.
Television,
yeah,
Patti Smith, on and on down the pantheon. She was probably best known to some people as writing a number of wonderful hits for the Blue Oyster Cult, who she was associated with for 30 years, really.
Right.
Albert Bouchard, their founding drummer, joined her band when he left the cult and is still a dear friend of mine. Helen won gold and platinum records for songs on the iconic BOC album, Agents of Fortune. Yep. And I have to say, with more than a little pride, I am probably the only person in ufology who also has been awarded gold and platinum records for that same album for work and art direction. She was a remarkable person, a great artist, a great poet, and one of the kindest and most extraordinary human beings I've ever met. I'm biased, of course. We lost my sister in January of 2000, but she certainly packed more into her 50 years than most people could possibly do in about 100.
And can I say, stunningly beautiful. Mm-hmm. I mean, seriously, it's just incredible. The hair, the look, and she was in shape. She was in shape
she
before.
Was actually
she was like,
her stage act was so physical,
right,
that she suffered a lot of performance related injuries. She was doing mosh pit jumps a decade or so before there were mosh pits. Nobody would really catch her. And that kind of encouraged her to take better care of herself, but ultimately to get dead serious about becoming a female bodybuilder. And in her weight class, I'm guessing about 100 pounds soaking wet, all 4'11" of her, she was a ranking national female bodybuilder for some years, as well as a trainer, as well as a nutritionist, as well as a great scholar and one hell of a performer and writer.
Yeah, the Fadernauts are posting pictures of her right now. This is great. And Helen Wheels Band at CBGB's right there. Wow. Got some flyers up in the feed. Look, she was just incredible looking.
Yeah, She also was, among her other talents, after her getting her degree in English literature, which she didn't want people to know about, when you're creating your artist persona, you want people to think you just kind of, by spontaneous combustion, burst into flame and appeared on East 6th Street in the East Village, fully formed and ready to go. but she was also a graduate of the French Fashion Tailoring Institute. And before she got her big break, she was making like one-of-a-kind leathers for rock groups in the mid-'70s. And ultimately her then boyfriend, and 2 more times over the next 30 years, Albert Bouchard, said, why don't you, let's take some of your poems, because she was a fine poet. Let us put them to music and run them by the guys and see if anybody likes them. And they went gold and they went platinum, and the rest is history. But she made her own costumes and had a very fine sense of makeup, a great sense of self-promotion, and a wonderful act of being the most menacing 4'11" creature ever to walk the earth. But in fact, she was a bit of a cream puff behind the scenes. And again, one of the kindest, loveliest people you could ever want to meet, Jimmy.
Yeah. Did she, I'm looking at her arms here and some bodybuilding stuff. Did she ever give you one to the chin?
No, but I like to stay on the right side of her. She could probably bench press you when she was, top form. And it was intimidating. There's, she really was a legend in a lot of people's minds. And when she passed, a lot of people mourned. And her New York, we had 2 memorials for her. The one in the city was in the basement of an old building on the Lower East Side, originally an old synagogue that was now a community center. Over 200 people showed up.
Right.
A mixture of actors, performers, relatives. Hell's Angels loved her because she wrote a song that became kind of their iconic anthem, Brotherhood of Outlaws, and it even spread to English chapters, and one upstate some months after the fact. But still lives large in a lot of people's minds.
Now,
and her music, I must say, has aged very well.
I always thought, can we clear up some of the urban myth here? So did McCartney write Helen Wheels about her?
No. Once in the
it's
old
spelled,
days before Punk hit, when we were semi-regulars at Max's Kansas City, listening to, Lou Reed when he broke in, and so many wonderful, iconic acts. He was there, and I remember it was a big deal. He was in a booth in the corner. But no, she got her name from the then lead singer in the mid-'70s or 76 when she broke in, of the great New York punk group, The Dictators.
Oh, yeah.
Handsome Dick Manitoba.
Yep.
Who named her Helen Wheels as a pun for Hell on Wheels, which she certainly was. So, but completely separate. Helen Wheels, Legends and Myths.
Yeah, too much of a coincidence. Okay, all right, that's Paul's story. Let him stick to it then. Okay, all right. But this is the other part, though. So you're hanging out with Blue Oyster Cult, and you're running around in New York in the rock circles like this. Were you like on the side of the stage during Don't Fear the Reaper and Godzilla?
This was before Godzilla. I was their photographer for a time. I was on the stage in some performances. And I remember one out-of-town performance, maybe a 5,000-person venue. I'm taken out in the pitch darkness. I find a great shot. I've got my Nikon F2. I am totally ready to rock and get great shots. And I find, what I think is kind of a low prop to sit on. And as their shows always used to begin, the announcer would go, "Ladies and gentlemen, the Blue Oyster Cult." And the flash pots would go off all along the stage.
You sat on a flash pot.
I was sitting on one. Laugh now. It blew me into a bank of Marshall lamps and knocked me out. And they began with me unconscious off to the side of the stage. I know, because these guys were my friends. They were concerned, but they had a show to do. And they were all fairly optimistic that I had survived. And apparently the roadies couldn't get me. And after a fashion, I came to, and with great humiliation crept off and got my shots from the corner. But for the rest of the show, something didn't smell right. There was something wrong. And it wasn't until after the show that I came off, and people were looking at me funny, and I went into the dressing room and I looked at me to see why they were looking at me funny.
Assless chaps.
Half the hair on my head had been singed like a chicken.
Right.
It smelled bad. It looked worse. And I was stubborn enough to wait a day or two to get a haircut, I guess, hoping I could force it back. But no, we had a lot of fun, and
I haven't laughed that hard in a long time.
It was a much more innocent time, and I remember a good deal of it, all things considered.
So, Peter, it's the 70s. It's an arena. It's Blue Oyster Cult. A little. Did you do a little?
More than little. But Jimmy, I came of age in the 60s. I took my first LSD trip when it was still legal in America, and it was Sandoz Pharmaceutical, Swiss manufactured. And my relationship with it was a great teacher. I learned a lot. I was very much alive in the 60s, and, psychedelics were my friend. And ultimately, I, discontinued using them. But I used them a great deal back then, and that's really the reason why you see in front of you this wasted, drug-addled, babbling hulk in a shell of a former human being.
How did you start to put words together? And I was, and the reason why I ask, I have such great respect and admiration for an author of a book, any book. It doesn't matter. There's so much discipline that it takes, and you have to overcome so many things to even get words on a page, and then get them to a point where somebody else can appreciate them and not close the book and put it on the shelf. They finish the book because you've drawn them in. I don't know if I could have that kind of discipline. When did you realize you could put words together?
Let's go back to when I first started to read. I'm still severely dyslexic, and I have to compensate in a number of ways. I was about 8 when I first fell in love with reading and was competent enough to tackle, books that were challenging. One of the first books that I read was my father's copy of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. I still have it. It was published in 1920. Falling apart, but a precious book to me. I then read Tom Sawyer, which was very challenging. And I remember my parents talking to me about the book after, but I could hardly believe what the world of words was taking me into. And I've always been an avid reader. When I went to art school, after studying art for 2 years in university, my only intention and desire was to be a painter. A serious New York-based painter, and a very successful one. And years before I even thought about writing, it was my dear girlfriend, Christine, back then, love of my life, who pointed out to me that my paintings were mutating and going from fairly traditional works in art school to more modern, to white paint on masonite that I was scratching words into with the back of the brush. I thought, well, what does she know? Ultimately, though, when I was in my earlier 30s and thought, I can make pictures with words, I decided I would try my hand on it. And I started by writing what I remembered from childhood, the layout of my grandparents' apartment, walking to school with a paper bag in the rain with a sandwich in it. I didn't show anything to anybody for a full year. I just kept writing. And at a certain point, I think I showed Helen and then a few friends. And then ultimately in the later 70s, I submitted an article to a now long defunct publication, Ancient Astronauts, it was actually called, in the late 70s. One that one of my first friends in the work, Jim Beckley, had turned me on to. And they accepted the article. And I got $100, and all of a sudden, I was a professional writer.
Yep, can't take that away.
Then it was another article.
Right.
Then it was my first conference paper. Then it was the power of words. Could I possibly ultimately tackle a book-length project? And ultimately, I found one. Took a long time, very rewarding, blew up in my face years later, wrote several others. Mostly I've concentrated on smaller pieces of writing. I will say, although I will give no details, I'm working on something now that will reveal itself sometime next year. And I hope I always keep a hand in it because I think it's important, because it inspires, hopefully, other people to put down their thoughts or the story they want to tell. And let's face it, storytelling is one of the oldest arts we human beings have, and something that you, me, a lot of our colleagues share. And I am proud of my storytelling abilities. My only rule of thumb is my stories are all true, but many of them do not sound that way because of the life that I've lived and living still.
Yeah. For certain. And when, like, this current project that you're working on, do you plan your day? You know, I'm going to write so many pages today. I'm going to do a word count today, and that's your goal, or you don't get to eat lunch, right?
Not on this one. Not on this one. It's much more organic. I have plenty of other obligations in the work that we do, in obligations that I choose to have to friends, of proofreading their stuff, of writing a foreword or a blurb, or sitting down with somebody and imparting what I know, doing editing work. Other projects I have been much more rigorous with myself about, and the best writers that I know in terms of quality and output they have a work ethic that's ferocious. I mean, you know, you look at Kevin Randle.
Yeah.
He told me he stopped counting when he had his 125th book published.
Yeah. I've talked to him about that a couple of times. Yeah, Nick Redfern, exactly.
These people are amazing.
Yep. Yeah, and okay, so, but I want to better understand the process when you do have to get down to the getting down, right? You've got to work. How do you do it? Do you plan for 8 hours, or do you do a burst for an hour and you manage to crank out 10 pages in an hour and you take the rest of the day off? How does this work?
Well, I know no writer that could produce 10 quality pages that they're going to stick with in an hour. I wasn't friends with, but I had a cordial, friendly relationship for some years with Norman Mailer, who even was kind enough to read the first few chapters of the first book that I read and give me feedback on them. And Norman told me a number of things that I never forgot about writing. By the way, he wrote every single word of every book that he wrote, even including those monsters that would kill a large animal if they fell off the table, by hand.
Right.
But after his first book, Naked and the Dead, he had enough income to have a secretary to transcribe what he wrote in the morning so he could go back to it in the afternoon, etc. What I do is, part of my drive mechanism is the same thing that propelled me through finishing reports and papers in high school. Sheer terror of not getting it in on time, because I'd always wait till pretty much the last minute. I am a cheerful insomniac, and in this period of my life where I don't work a day job, I can easily stay up till 3 a.m. typing away, and that's often the time that I think, look at this, I'm a genius. I can't believe what I'm getting out here. This is amazing. And then you read it again in the late morning and you think, oh my God.
That's the worst thing I ever did. Yes.
Was I on drugs? And I know I wasn't. Was I drinking? No, I know I wasn't. I was just deluding myself. And then you go back into it. Part of the craft for me is to keep going back into what you've done and refine it and polish it and find a way to have it lean as it can be. An editor I once had said, when you write a manuscript, you can drop 90% of the word that you put in. It was a revelation. But look at anything that you write sometimes and see how many superfluous that's there are. Norman told me once that, you know, that feeling of you've got a paragraph and you've got the ultimate closing sentence. You are going to knock people out of the socks by the end of this paragraph. And it's all about, gee, what can I do to build up to that amazing sentence that I've already got? He said, junk it. Always put your best stuff first. He said, start with that sentence. and then challenge yourself to do better by the end of the paragraph. Once again,
wow,
it completely blew my mind.
Right.
But these are the things that add up. I've never taken a writing class, but for me, I take writing classes every day because as much as a movie maniac as I am, going back to childhood, I could have easily gone into the film world, in production, in acting, in certainly as a film historian, which is, an avocation of mine. And this coming Monday, my guest is going to be a wonderful writer, director, producer named Christopher Munch, who most recently has a film out that you can see on Amazon called The 11th Green, about Eisenhower and the aliens. Very low key, quite brilliant. But I keep inspiring myself by reading a lot. And I feel obligated. I don't love, I fell into ufology by total obsession when my sister Helen shared with me, well before Bud Hopkins wrote Missing Time, published in 1981, memories of an abduction experience. I've heard hundreds like them now, even to the words that have, come into your head from the other intelligences. And I was obsessed. I didn't go into it because I was intrigued or intellectually curious. I just needed to know what the hell had happened to my sister and what the hell these things were about. And it modified along the way. And at a certain point, I realized I'm involved in a field that's important, even though it's considered fringe and ridiculed. My contributions might be valuable and I should stick with it. And, you keep doing it and you don't die. And at a certain point, people say, oh, you're somebody in this. Well, how nice for you. Not realizing that, you're working hard all the time. My point is, I read UFO books, of course, and I have so many great colleagues who are coming out with new ones all the time, and I try to keep up with all of them as much as possible. But I read a lot of fiction now, something I felt very guilty about for decades. 80s, I went through every espionage fiction book ever written in the English language. And one of my greatest paranormal thrills was in the summer of 97, when Left at Eastgate was charting top 10 across the United Kingdom. And the book was about number 6. John le Carré's newest novel that summer, The Tailor of Panama, was at number 8. For me, that's about the wildest paranormal literary experience I've had in my life.
Well, I went through a lot of guilt. We got to take a break right here, Peter. Yep. But I went through a lot of guilt. I wouldn't even admit it. Clive Cussler. Man, I'm telling you.
Great storyteller.
Great storyteller. I obsessed with Clive.
Titanic.
Oh, man. You know what? And that's not even his good stuff, right? Sahara. Oh, but I obsessed over Clive Cussler. I did, and it was like this guilty pleasure. I'll admit, I read Danielle Steele. I did, and I've just revealed way too much. But
I'll be going now.
Yes, but I'm a nonfiction reader. That's where I love great history, documentaries, and and that's where my heart lies. But once in a while, man, you got to break free with some Danielle Steele. Okay, let's take our break right here. Our guest tonight, the one and only Peter Robbins. We got a lot to cover. We're going to try to get it all in, and I'm challenged. We had a great show last night. We got to top it tonight. I'm bringing out my A game with Peter Robbins. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We'll be right back after this short break on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. Stay with us.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station, Salt Lake City, Utah, Van Buren, Arkansas.
This is Billy Carson with ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Forbidden Knowledge TV has just reached its 1-year anniversary. That's right, 1 year. And as a show of appreciation, we are giving all new subscribers a free 30-day trial of ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. That's 30 days to binge watch thousands of movies, documentaries, conferences, workshops, lectures, yoga classes, meditation courses, and so much more. So log on to ForbiddenKnowledge.tv from your computer or mobile device, or get the Forbidden Knowledge TV app on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon, iTunes, or Google Play today, and use coupon code 30daysfree. That's coupon code 30daysfree on ForbiddenKnowledge.tv today.
Because you never got that pony you always wanted. Damn it. Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network. KGRADB.com.
Listen, I know, and you know, that you've always wanted your first crystal skull. Or maybe you're a collector just like me, but you just don't know where to go to find the real thing. Then I met Carolyn Ford over at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com. Carolyn is the guardian of Einstein, one of the most respected ancient crystal skulls in the world. All of her unique skulls have been imprinted sitting with Einstein in his sacred lodge and are carved from the finest gemstone and materials. Imprinting is the process of receiving the ancient wisdom from the master skull or master computer. Einstein, the ancient crystal skull. To see Carolyn's current collection of crystal skulls, just visit her store at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com or click on the banner over on our site. Don't forget to use the promo code Jimmy at checkout to receive 10% off of your order today. That's promo code Jimmy. Finding your first or next crystal skull is easy. Just visit EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Yes, Rivermoon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2B Blend for 15% off of your order today.
Hello, I'm Katie, and you're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA digital broadcast station.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier. And this is Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers.
Yes.
We're of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And I'm Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
And you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can become an official Fadernaut by just going to our membership section at jimmychurchradio.com.
Hello, this is Serena Wright Taylor from Conscious Life Expo, and you're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church, who holds the Lucky Pony record for the best astrological chart since 1963. True story.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black, across the globe on the Game Changer Radio Network and the one and only KGRA Radio, The Planet.
Welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Peter Robbins is here. Now, all of Peter's links are over at jimmychurchradio.com. You can click, of course, his show, Meanwhile Here on Earth, airs Monday nights right before Fade to Black. Great show.
And you can follow his social media links. We've got it up on social media. Now, Peter, I was just thinking during the break, Dirk Pitt, right? Clive Cussler, his hero, Dirk Pitt. And so it's like page 1. I got the new book, and it always reads something like this. Dirk Pitt is in a surfing competition in Florida. He's winning. It's his final run. He's on a big wave. The crowd is cheering. He's on, from the beach, and he's surfing in. And then in the background, the space shuttle Atlantis is coming in, and it's off course, and it crash lands in the water. He breaks off the surf. Paddles up on his surfboard, kicks in the windows, pulls the pilot out, helicopter lands. He saves the pilot's life. He goes on, jumps on the helicopter, and they take him to the Pentagon, and he's got to go into a secret room. And 2 hours later, he's on his way to Greece because there's it's like, it's the first page, right? And I'm like, this is the best stuff ever. I haven't even flipped to page 2. I love that stuff, man. I love that stuff. And I can't imagine what's going through Clive's mind, because it's just got to be the funnest stuff ever. Where am I going to take this?
That is something that I admire and envy to a degree, because I've never written fiction.
Right.
I just try to find reality that, again, sounds like fiction to a lot of people. For me, the closest thing like that to kind of a Jones of going through book after book was Robert Ludlum for a period of time.
Totally.
And this is, probably 2 decades or a decade and a half at least before the Bourne movies started to come out. And I thought they were all great films. I mean, Matt Damon for me is one of our finest and most versatile actors. And, talk about nonstop, wonderfully choreographed action. But to have it come alive in your head with words is something, sadly, that for a lot of people, they're not interested in. We live in a much more short attention span world. Show me pictures, let things explode. I'm old enough to remember the very end of the golden age of radio that I used to listen to with my Russian immigrant Nana in her kitchen in Queens, as she'd be making everything from scratch. And shows that ultimately were kid shows on TV when I was young, Gunsmoke, The Lone Ranger, detective shows, cop shows, theater of the mind. And a good film, films again, I couldn't live without them, but reading and relishing, enjoying, just getting such a kick out of creating those pictures for yourself rather than having them trotted out in front of you on a screen is a whole nother experience.
Did you ever get into like the Party Line on WOR in New York? The late night talk radio stuff. Did you listen to that?
I did sometimes, but by the time I was in high school, I was just not listening to radio. For me, it was more like in adolescence and early teenage years, Murray the K, and Cousin Brucey, and all of the great first wave of amazing pop music and Motown and doo-wop and soul music that informed so much of my life since. But often at the beginning, the thrill of listening to it in the earpiece with your transistor radio while you're reading a comic with your flashlight, and thinking that your parents aren't aware that you're not sleeping.
I thought I was the only.
It's kind of a combination, trifecta.
Right. I did. I thought I was the only one that did that. You know what I used to do? I had a little black and white TV, and I tied a string onto the plug, and I ran the string behind my desk and around and I could pull it and pull the plug out from the wall. This is before remote controls. And so I would hear my dad get up. I could hear him get up from the other side of the wall, and I pull the plug, and he would come in and look, and the TV's off, and I'm in bed. And you
invented a remote control, basically.
Right. And I'd like to think that he didn't know He probably did. But yeah, we all did that, didn't we? Now, you're sitting in front of a lot of books. You're sitting in your library, and it is impressive. The rant that I did at the beginning of the show today, just from memory, I just popped out like 20 of what I think are essential reads in ufology. And I know that you have done the same thing. And so when somebody asks you, and I know you get this question all the time, what's the book? Where should I start? I want to, what's, and they look to you for the right answer. So the first book that comes to mind for essential reading, what is it?
If they're serious, I'll often think chronologically. Start with Donald Keyhoe.
Yeah.
Highly decorated Marine World War II fighter pilot, the first best-selling UFO-related author, scientifically based, military perspective.
Are you talking about Flying Saucers Are Real?
Yeah, Flying Saucer Conspiracy.
Right.
He turned out one book after another and became very iconic in part because of his entry into late-night radio through Long John Nebel and one or two other major broadcasters who made him something of a household name. Morris K. Jessup is another one who, for me, his books are still very readable from the 50s. They're well-researched, they're compelling, and they drive you on. If I had to give a quick compendium of authors if you really want to get the dope on quality writing and good research that stood the test of time, I would go Timothy Good's Above Top Secret or Beyond Top Secret, Bud Hopkins' Intruders and Missing Time, David Jacobs, almost any of David's books, although many people have problems with him because they feel he was pushing an agenda when these were simply the results that he got. John Mack's book, Abduction, that I had the honor of proofreading. Whitley Strieber's Communion, which I had the honor of proofreading as well. There are so many independent small writers, well, it's not small writers, but small books that kind of go by the wayside that shouldn't. At this point, we joke about it, but Richard Dolan has made so many contributions to the work, and he's a sharp, prolific, really high-quality writer and researcher. His first 2 volumes of UFOs in the National Security State, third coming at us at some point in the future, are essential for any good UFO-related library. I would say, I'm almost hard-pressed to, not push Friends on us, but at the same time, Firestorm by Ann Druffel, the definitive biography of Dr. James McDonald, one of the greatest scientists to ever take the UFO cause and try to break through to the establishment and to the government. He was a casualty. It wasn't like he was murdered per se, but he might as well have been. He took his own life because of tremendous depression, in part because of vicious debunkers like Philip Klass, who just wouldn't leave well enough alone. I think the works of Jacques Vallée are very important, especially if you're like me. And when you first got into the work, it's machines from other planets, from other places. What else could it be? Well, there's a lot of things that it could be, and Vallée will open your mind on them. Almost any book by the late, great Stanton T. Friedman is worth reading. He was in a class by himself, nuclear physicist, probably spoke at more places for more organizations and more universities and colleges than all the rest of us put together. The books that he's produced with my friend and colleague Kathleen Marden are worthy of respect as well. The book on the abduction files that Kathleen has written with Denise Stoner is very important too. The abduction phenomena is central to me and what I keep coming back to in the work. I think it is a huge key to what at least that group of other intelligences are all about, their motivations and their goals. And again, for me personally, that's how I got into the work. And having worked for years as Bud Hopkins' assistant having the privilege of being kind of the fly on the wall for several hundred cases, some of them fairly briefly examined, other ones for years, including dear Deb White Jordan's story, which ultimately became Intruders, the miniseries, and before that, the book. And now Deb has her own wonderful book out with August Night Press. If you are a culture vulture like me and you love films, Robbie Graham's Silver Screen Saucers is the definitive book, not just about UFOs and other intelligences in in film, but written by a guy who is also a very fine ufologist. Robbie is British, and he knows both sides of the game and brings them together in this remarkable volume. I mean, I could literally spend the rest of the show just turning around every once in a while and giving you brief synopses of so many books. I think if you're serious about it, it's a very analog thing to do in this digital world, and it could apply to whatever it is that's a central passion subject in your life. Build a library. Take pride in building a library around a subject that you love. I have other libraries in other parts of the house. One of them looks like it's 20th century literature first editions. Some of them are, but more of them are 2nd, 3rd, 7th, and 17th editions of books that have been written in this century and the last, 20th century primarily, but now we've got the 21st century. Mm-hmm. It took me a few years to realize, and I had to laugh when I did, that being a film lover, 95% of those books are all books that were made into films. And as is often the case, the book is better than the film, even if the film is great. Every once in a while, they're fairly equal. Other times, occasionally, a film will surpass a book. But usually, go to the source. Perfect example, there was a film 4 or 5 years ago starring the British actor Clive, I'll think of his last name. It's a very wonderful dystopian fantasy about what if by the year 2020, all men have gone sterile and the populations of the world are dying off. Written by a woman named P.D. James, who I knew first as a great British detective writer. And
Clive Owen.
There you go, Clive Owen. I remember enjoying the film, saw the book last year at a book sale, bought it, not only couldn't put it down, it was one of those books where as you get to the last quarter, you find yourself slowing down because you don't want it to end.
Right.
Not only was the storytelling brilliant, but every sentence, every paragraph was so beautifully constructed. The images, and again, I'm not your normal American, well, in many respects, but in terms of, I visited the United Kingdom 20 or 25 times in my life. And so I have a sense of, the English countryside and certain aspects of it. I think anybody who's never been to England would enjoy it as much. Once again, going back to just the joy of reading good, well-written books.
Well, okay. Let me throw a couple of titles out there that for me.
Interrupted Journey, John Fuller?
Yeah, I was going right there. The Interrupted Journey, and what had happened to me. I've told the story too many times, so I'm going to give you the 10-second version. I rent a house in Pasadena, California. It's a 5-bedroom house. My first night in the house is empty. I'm sleeping on the floor with a blanket. I've got no radio, got no TV. I've got a little lamp that is sitting on the floor, and I'm walking through the house. The house is empty. It's clean. It's all painted white, and there's nothing in it. But I open up this closet in one of the bedrooms for some reason, and I see a couple of books on this in the back. There's nothing in the house but these 2 books. Yeah. And I'm like, what? So I pull them down. It's friggin' The Interrupted Journey and The Andreesen Affair. What the hell? What?
Raymond Fowler, another
Raymond
writer,
Fowler, right? Yeah, right. What are the odds of that? So, and I go back and okay. So my mistake was I read The Andreesen Affair first. Okay, and that book is so well written, and it is a series of transcriptions of the regression, right? and it is in such vivid detail. It's like the Wizard of Oz kind of world. And I got really freaked out. But the thing was, it was one of those books in ufology that is a must read. Yeah. And it was on this shelf. It was like meant for me. And then I wrapped that up in like a day, and then I read The Interrupted Journey again. One of the reasons why I think these two books are so great is they are a moment in time, because they were written as these things were going down.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Fuller, for starters, he was not just, he wasn't a UFO writer. He was a credentialed journalist. And he learned about the Betty and Barney Hill case, approached them, and wrote their story in a way that a journalist would write it. Well backed up with all the factual material at the time, but again, a brilliant storyteller. Raymond Fowler is kind of a legend in the work. He's now well in his 80s, probably closing on 90, working on a book right now. And an extremely ethical man, a religious man who approached the subject straightforward. These are my beliefs. I'm going to put them down over here. I'm going to approach this. And the Andreasen case is so complex and was so ongoing and so detailed and so well documented for so long. He wrote a series. His book on the Allagash affair, one of the most extraordinary abduction cases ever, of 4 young men, friends, all of them artists, going on a camping trip in Maine and literally taken from their 2 canoes at night. In fact, Charlie Foltz and Jim Weiner, both dear friends, will be my guests on Meanwhile Here on Earth, I think in early October, late September. I think it's October. But there's a story that also deserves tremendous attention and respect, and once again, extremely well documented.
And one of my favorite books that I've always gone back to, The Report on Unidentified Flying Objects by Ruppelt.
Edward J. Ruppelt.
Strong.
There's a classic.
Yeah, and it's written in it's a moment in time. It's more like a historical document. Yeah. And again, just well written too, as well, from somebody that is so well respected.
Also, you can almost try to get behind his eyes. He wasn't a writer. He was an Air Force officer, and he was writing about the investigation then going on. He had to walk, I'm sure, a very fine line. It's to the Air Force's credit that they didn't redact it more, whatever they, took out. And to his credit that he had the guts to do it. But there is a very important singular piece of UFO literature for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Now, you brought up Long John Nebel, and it's really funny.
Frank Edwards also in the same breath. He was as popular a night television guy and also brought on Kehoe a number of times and became very involved in paranormal studies himself. To cut you off, sorry.
Well, you can step on me anytime. But I bring him up because of Kehoe. Mm-hmm. Now, when people ask me why I got into radio, when I bring up Long John Nebel, unless you were a child of the 50s and 60s, you probably never heard of him. I studied this man, and he talk about theater of the mind, right? He was the best at it, and in my opinion, created late night talk radio. I think it was all on Long John Nebel's shoulders, but it was his shows. If you go back and listen to his shows with Kehoe, at the moment when all of this stuff was going on, like when Kehoe got cut off by CBS television, that was a really big deal, and they rolled the credits, and he went off script. He brings Kehoe on the next day anyway. The point is, Kehoe, not only was he a member of the military, but he was absolutely steadfast, trying to get answers out of the government and would not stop. And to hear him speak in his own breath on Long John Nebel's show, it's just historical.
He gave him a national voice.
Yes.
And that was the thing that mattered. I remember fairly recently, as I do sometimes, just going back, the amazing gift that YouTube is in terms of there's a zillion tons of crap on there, but there's so much history and so much wonderful obscura that's on there. It was the young Mike Wallace who did the interview. Mike was a journalist I really respected, and certainly one of the best over time. But at the time, it was almost instilled in major media talking heads. A huge amount of my work over the years has been how the birth of UFO ridicule. How did it happen? It's totally counterintuitive. If you see somebody and say, hey, I saw something in the sky that I never saw before, from 1947 on, America and the Western world was brilliantly conditioned to think, what's wrong with this guy? Is he delusional? Does he want to fool me? Has he become a mystic? Is he is he institutionalizable? Is he want to be famous? Wilhelm Reich had a wonderful phrase called evasion of the obvious. The idea that it was little green men from Mars, everybody will, ha, ha, ha. And it worked. And it's only, as we know, in the last 3 or 4 years that it started to unravel. And by giving Kehoe a voice, and he was very articulate, he didn't take crap from anyone, and he said what was on his mind. And it drove people to his books. And one after another, they became New York Times and other newspaper bestsellers around the country. And that part of America, at least, had a serious introduction to the subject while everybody else is laughing up their sleeve.
Yeah,
but Neville kind of, you're right. He really invented the form in a way like, Jack Parr kind of invented late night talk show along with a few other pioneers. And nothing's ever been the same since.
No, that's right. That's right. And Kehoe was able to stay in his military face.
Yeah.
He never broke. He never broke from his absolute seriousness. I don't think the man ever laughed.
If he did, it was never on camera. Also, one of the things there is that my dad's generation, he was a decorated Marine combat pilot in Europe. And that cachet, nobody laughed at. So you listened. If you were a veteran or in a veteran's family or, a proud American coming out of the hot war into the Cold War, this was a voice that was reasonable, even while everything else in the media, pushed gently along by the government, was saying, move along, folks, nothing to see here.
We got to take a break right here. Let's get it in. Our guest tonight, the one and only Peter Robbins. What a great conversation. I knew it, but we got a lot of work to do. We got a top last night, and we are going to do just that. My guest, Peter Robbins. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRARadio.com.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Do you want to be an official Fadernaut? Of course you do. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Just go to our membership section at jimmychurchradio.com. This is Jimmy Church, and I invite you to attend the 20th Annual Los Angeles Conscious Life Expo live and in person this September 17th, 18th, and 19th at the LAX Airport Hilton. Connect with exhibitors, community, thought leaders, and friends as we begin to recreate the world. You can also watch the expo from the comfort of your own home. Live stream from the main stage in Los Angeles and from the main stage in London. Truly a global simulcast event broadcast around the world. Live stream and in-person expo tickets are available now. I'll be your host all weekend long from Los Angeles. And on Friday, it's my Ancient Secrets and Earth Mysteries themed segment with James Keenan, Caroline Corey, and William Henry. And on Saturday, Daniel Sheen and I sit down for a one-on-one interview live. We have an amazing lineup of 25 speakers, including Bashar, Gail Thackeray, Kimberly Meredith, Whitley Strieber, Stephen Bassett, Daniel Brinkley, and Lisa Garr. Please visit ConsciousLifeExpo.com for tickets and info. That's ConsciousLifeExpo.com and use that promo code Jimmy for a special discount. Fadernauts. When you think about the future of our country and where we're headed, do you wonder about the food supply? I do. Disruptions in the food supply chain could be disastrous, and they usually occur with little warning. That's why the smartest thing you can do today is to stockpile emergency food, water, and other essentials. I personally recommend My Patriot Supply. They're the nation's largest emergency preparedness company, serving millions of customers for more than a decade. In fact, they're the only source my family trusts for our preparedness plan. You should too. Right now, save 20% off a full 4-week supply of delicious meals that provide 2,000 calories a day. Saving 20% helps too, doesn't it? Especially now. So go to preparewithjimmy.com and get ready. That's preparewithjimmy.com. There's no time to lose. Do it now.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
You listen to us, and we listen to you. And so does the CIA. KGRARadio.com.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Peter Robbins. More with Peter in just a second because Peter left the room. He's not even on camera. He's not even on camera. Want to talk to you about Virtual Shield VPN. You've got to get your own VPN today. You know what I'm about to say. This is the world that we live in. You need to run in private. You don't need people to know your search history. You don't need advertisers to know. You don't need nothing. Just imagine this. You go and you search some strange skin condition, right? You go and you do, and suddenly you've got advertising popping up for medications and doctors. It's like, who is following my stuff? They are. And then who else needs to find out about this? They do. And that information is shared. You need your stuff private. You need your location private. You need your search history private. All of that. Okay? Virtual Shield VPN, a no logs policy. Your search history, nobody knows but you. Okay? Encrypted servers all around the world. Nobody's going to know. And it's all easy to do. Click on the link in the video description box below. 50% off.
Go to jimmychurchradio.com. Click on the advertising there. 50% off. Type into your browser, virtualshield.com/fade to black. That's all you got to do. 50% off for life. Virtual Shield, the best VPN today. Do it now. Our guest tonight, Peter Robbins. And Peter, I wanted to back up for a second. And I thought of Ann Druffel. I want to share an Ann Druffel story with you. So I have Ann. She lives a couple of miles from me. And she was in possession. She just recently passed, and
Yes.
Rest in peace, Ann. She was just amazing. But anyway, she goes, Jimmy, right? Her little voice, Jimmy, do you want to see the Rex Heflin Polaroids? I said, what? I have them in a box under my bed. I said, Ann, what? Right? And I said, are you being serious? I have the original pictures. How cool is that, right? You know, and now I'm wondering where they are. She has left this earth, and the Rex Heflin pictures were in a box under her bed. And wow. Well, anyway, but that's not the best part of the story. So we're sitting, we're talking about, McDonald and things, and it was just a wonderful conversation. She was just precious. And I'm thinking she was probably in her late 80s, when I was, when I had her on the show. But she goes, Jimmy, can you hold on for a second? There's somebody at my door. I said, okay, go ahead, Ann. And I can hear her. She gets up, she walks across the floor, and we're all listening to her. Hello. She opens up her door, and she's talking, and she comes back. That was the gas company. I have a problem, and they're outside working on the house. I said, Ann, you are the best. She goes, I'm so sorry about that. They might come back. If they do, I'll get the door again. And I love you. And this is radio gold right now. Absolute radio gold. I miss her so much. She was absolutely
She's also
amazing.
one of the finest research writers we had. And one of the reasons why her biography of Dr. McDonald will never be equaled was she was very close to him, and they worked closely together. And she wrote it with such objectivity and such knowledge of his life and work, with access through his family to his archives, that it's literally a Greek tragedy. He was beyond brilliant and courageous in a way that very few people in public life were, when going up against the establishment and trying to let them understand the reality of this problem and this situation and this phenomenon.
Well, he was extremely educated and a pure intellectual. Yeah. And so his approach to this, he knew something was going on. And I do believe, and as Ann believes, he stumbled onto some secret stuff. Yeah. And now, did that, and his death was strange and weird and all of that. But the other part was, I think that Ann wrote the book from the center when she was also, I'm not saying she was romantically involved with James. Well, maybe, I don't know. But she held him in such high regard. And she could have written the book from another mindset, and she didn't do that. It wasn't a fangirl, written with passion. It was written very from an objective place, and you're right about that. But she was very close to him, and you can tell in the interview that I did. And for everybody out there, it's in the archives. You can go back and listen to it. I think she was saddened. They were very, very close. And that was part of her life. She was chasing this along with James, and then all of a sudden he's gone. And it was very tough on her.
Two quick epilogues. One is that he took his life in 1971, but he was increasingly furious at Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who was a paid employee of the CIA, involved in counterproductive knowledge for public dissemination about the UFO phenomena, to put people off, to continue the debunking, etc. And he tore him a new one. He let him have it so bad that many of us credit his blast of rage directly at Hynek to his face, with the guilt also and the sadness of his death not long after, with Hynek's completely turning around. But here's a little bit of karmic, payback. Epilogue.
Yeah, epilogue.
McDonald was an atmospheric physicist and one of the most respected in the United States. He was associated with the University of Arizona, where he lived. And when the SST, that went on to become the Concorde, was undergoing congressional hearings about its potential safety or pollution or whatever, he was asked to testify. They couldn't have gotten a better person. But one certain Senator Ryan from my home state basically blew him out of the water, humiliated him internationally, put him into even worse depression by saying, "Aren't you the guy that thinks flying saucers are real? Why should we listen to you on this?" Well, some years later, when the People's Temple moved down to Jonestown and Jim Jones went kind of crazy, it was Ryan, who was one of the congressmen who went down to confront him because he had constituents that were in the People's Temple.
He was on the plane. That's right.
Senator Ryan was shot dead on the tarmac when he landed, shortly before all these people took their lives. And I always thought that was, as I think it was H.L. Mencken who once said, "I have never killed a man, but I have read many obituaries. I have approved of many obituaries that I have read."
Now, one author, I've got to get your take, because somebody that sucked me in was John Keel. John had a way of getting it done, and it was he almost wrote. Now, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but he made me go into a dream state. Did he do that for you?
I was lucky enough to know John. It was once again the late great Timothy Green Beckley who introduced me, and I used to go to hang out in Tim's apartment on East 30th Street in Manhattan, and John would talk. There'd be half a dozen of us there, or a very small venue, maybe 20 people, a little bitty rental hall above a tiny restaurant. He loved irony, he had a great sense of humor, and some years before I met him, I had returned from an adventure that you couldn't buy now for $10 million. I had failed my draft physical. I put a pack on my back. Well, I joined the Norwegian Merchant Marine, who wouldn't, shipped out as a deckhand on a freighter, and just started to drift east and ended up fairly close to the Tibetan border, having traveled the whole way overland. But I saw things walking around India that I still can't quite reconcile, explored parts of Afghanistan on my own twice, roamed around Iran. I was gone for a year, all on my own, all in days where you couldn't call your folks or anything like that. And John did something much the same. He was younger. The book that he wrote was his first one, is called Yadoo, Jadoo. And you see pictures of John, super slim, with a pith helmet, in obscure parts of the third world, roaming around. I had that connection with him, which we talked about, in which he saw me as sort of a brother seeker out in the midst of everything, all by yourself and living by your wits. His books, like Fort's books, like Vallet's books, they challenge your thinking. And again, there's always a twist of irony. If he didn't like what you were doing, or he thought somebody in the world of paranormal studies was an arrogant bastard, he would let you know, and sometimes if he had a chance, he would let them know. He could have cared less.
Now, where did his knowledge of esoterica and hermetica and the ancient teachings that he wove in, and would make these very obscure references that weren't necessarily directly connected to what he was writing about, but it seemed like he was putting like secret code in and it's suddenly, if you know about Hermeticism, you know what I mean?
I know what you're talking about, and it comes from something remarkably simple. He was an obsessive reader. In his small apartment in New York City, he had a wonderful library. He used the New York City Public Library as well. And like a lot of great thinkers, you get involved in a certain obscure, esoteric study or aspect of life or civilization, and then you realize that you need to learn more about this aspect of what influenced them. And it's a very exciting thing. You can look like, the world is going by you and nobody notice you on the street, but your mind is ablaze with ideas and synapses are snapping and you make connections. For me, one of the most exciting times for me is the many years I spent in the main branch of the New York City Public Library in the Rose Reading Room, which is one of the great public halls in America. Mm-hmm. If you're ever in New York, it's not usually thought of as a tourist spot.
Oh, it's
42nd Street,
yeah,
Fifth Avenue. Go to the top floor and go into the Rose Reading Room. It's bigger than a football field, and it's just reference books. But now it's computers, and you can read all day in there. You are connected with the great Akashic record in terms of books and now, of course, digitized information. But John's mind worked like that, and he was an avid reader. That's how he was able to do that. He traveled, but a lot of it was reading. Like for me, I feel connected to almost every place I've ever visited. And I mean it literally. I listen, like right now that we're pulling out of Afghanistan. I roamed around Afghanistan twice on my own at a time when it was a peaceful, tolerant, ancient kingdom, without threat. But still, you're on your own in one of the rawest parts of the world. Mm-hmm. And to this day, everything that happens there is important to me. The fact that we are leaving behind too many people who helped the Americans, that we didn't get out early enough. They're going to die because the Taliban will take over. They should all die, as far as I'm concerned. I hate those bastards. ISIS more, but you move into the rest of your life curious always about these places. Nepal, ancient Nepal, before the airport was enlarged and jets could go in, you had to go in there overland. We've all seen these pictures online of buses with drops a mile down and 6 inches of road to spare. Mm-hmm. I spent 8 hours on one of those buses, much to the credit of the British Engineering Corps and much to one of the great driving terrors on my life. Mm. When I left Nepal, I was so adamant on not taking that road back. Monsoons were already there, and I chartered a small plane to go over the lower Himalayas in a monsoon, which was also problematic at times, and one of those, well, maybe this is how I go. But you're connected. You want more information from the place. You want to learn more about its history. You never grow old in that sense. You just keep wanting to learn. And that's a precious place to be. So many people, they're old by the time they're 30. They just keep breathing, but they're not going anywhere. They're not going where, even if they're traveling, the process has stopped to a degree. They need to be entertained. They need to be stimulated by, if they go to the movies, it's got to have a lot of explosions and car crashes and a high body count, rather than a wonderful old black and white movie where people are acting and there's a great script and wonderful performers. And, a simple gesture or a double entendre can be sexier than a porn film, which I don't think are very sexy to start with. But once again, the theater of the mind, the power of the imagination, the desire, the drive to want to know more. My dad, who was not just a great dad, but a great guy, he was tragically snatched from us about 2.5 years ago at 98 years and 7 months old. He was totally compos mentis until a few days before he died, and he died on his own terms. He wrote a memoir that he started when he was 95 years old and finished when he was 97. And for anybody that wants to read it, you can find it on Amazon. It's called An Ordinary Man. Well, That's a point of his modesty, but that was the title of the book. He did one radio interview with the sister of a friend of mine who was a fairly well-known broadcaster in Hawaii. And he's hard of hearing. He had one of those old, high-tech 70s phones where you'd say something, and 5 seconds later, an LED printout would appear, and you would respond. So there were lots of pauses. It was pre-recorded. They closed the pauses. He sounded great. The final question that Annette had for him was, Alan, you've lived such a long life. You've lived through history. You've had tragedies. You've had wonderful things that happen. What is it that makes you want to keep going on and waking up every morning, aside from, your loved ones? And I thought, I want to see how Dad's going to answer this.
Right.
And he was quiet for a moment, and then he said, quote unquote, I want to see how things turn out.
That's it. I mean, that's the best answer, right?
And hopefully we all will wake up every morning continuing to want to see how things turn out.
Well,
we live in an interesting world. We're part of it.
We do. And this is where, and we'll continue this after the break, of course, but through these world travels and everything that is going on, did you have a sense that UFOs and ufology would take over your life? Was this something that was on the back of your mind?
Wasn't even in the back of my mind. This was quite some years before I had even a remote interest in it, with one brief exception. In Nepal, I was in a small city called Swayambhu, over the river from Kathmandu, where I had taken a room at the Matchbox Hotel. And every day I would visit the stupa there. As I recall, it was the second most holy stupa in Tibetan Buddhism. Stupas are an architectural form. You've probably seen them if you're interested in that stuff. It's just a large dome, often sitting on a platform with a low structure around it with insets. And in each inset is a prayer wheel. And monks will do their devotions by walking around and spinning the prayer wheel, and on each prayer wheel, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. And I thought at first, this is interesting. It's sort of like if you were a Catholic and you were working a huge rosary. It's just a meditative thing. On the top are always these big cupolas, often brass or copper and kept polished, each side of which is the all-seeing eyes of Buddha. And I remember as monsoons were coming, it had little prayer flags coming off of it. One of those moments as a photographer that you live for. In front of you is a major storm. The wind is whipping the flags, but behind you the sun is setting. So you've got that extraordinary quality of light. And I thought, wait a minute, this thing looks like a flying saucer from the movies. It's this totally curved landed thing with windows. And I went to the local historical society in Kathmandu soon after, asked the librarian if there was any reference or if she knew the origin of the form, because the form could have easily come before the cupolas were put on them.
Of course.
She didn't know, nobody knew, and the thought passed. But that was my only real moment of thinking about UFOs or anything like that during that whole year of wandering half the planet on my own and managing to come back pretty much in one piece.
And you have to wonder how far back in time that goes, right?
It could have predated
everything.
Buddhism.
Yes.
No problem.
Yeah.
We don't know. We don't know.
And when did the fork in the road occur? There's that defining moment in life, right? And Peter's going to go one direction. He's going to take the high road. He's going to take the low road. And one of these two roads is a UFO adventure.
As far as UFOs went, the fork in the road came in the mid-'70s when a repressed memory from childhood reemerged, and with a vengeance. I joke with people sometimes that I have other repressed memories from childhood. I don't remember them. But this one was a profoundly unambiguous daylight UFO sighting with my sister Helen, right in front of the house in the village we came of age in, about 30 miles east of Manhattan. And they were 5 silvery white disc-shaped objects that came in at high speed without a sound in a very precise V formation, close enough to make out regular detailing around the edge of each. that many years later, after my memory returned and we first discussed it, we could only conceive of or read as windows. They were elliptical, like dinner plates held at an angle. They were silvery white. They had no appendages whatsoever. And I couldn't handle it. It was too much of a challenge for my really very innocent, even as a 14-year-old, mind. I felt that the whole world was dropping out from under me, that everything that I thought I knew and had intuited from the adult world was now open to question, and I didn't like it. And over the next weeks, I did what now I thought was impossible. I put it out of my mind, and I just went on for more than 14 years. But when it came back, that day that Helen and I spoke, and that led to her telling me about her always conscious memories about aspects of being taken right then and there, at the end of that period, and being walked through a curved metal hallway, put on a metal table. The term gray was still a decade or so from existing, and she described them in her 12-year-old vision as little doctors with big heads and big black eyes, and one very tall one who spoke to me in my head. And that was it for me. And I have to tell you, Jimmy, I resented it because it obsessed me to the point that the only dream I had really had of adulthood from the time I was a kid, and I realized that there were adults who didn't go to the office like my dad or a factory or something. They did what I did. They made pictures, they made sculptures, and they sold them to other adults for money. How can you beat that? And I was starting to sell my work. I had a loft, a following. I worked in major galleries. I knew Andy Warhol. I knew Roy Lichtenstein. I had worked as a studio assistant to one of the last great abstract expressionists, Adolf Gottlieb. Right up there as a brother with de Kooning and Pollock and the rest of that ilk. I was on my way, but the rug was pulled out from under me. I continued to play at it and teach painting at the School of Visual Arts, show my work for some years, but I had been shot in the heart, and I couldn't get past the obsession. I still resent it to a degree. I think how different my life would have been. Not that I'm complaining about the life that I've lived since then, though. Don't get me wrong.
No, you wouldn't be here right now having this amazing conversation. But the thought of having something so traumatic, I've just got a minute before the break, something so traumatic that it does get blocked out. And when you hear other people talk about this, where it seems sensational, like maybe they're not telling the truth, and you have this experience, it makes you wonder, doesn't it?
When the memory came back, I was looking through drawings I had done as a kid on the floor of my loft in Chinatown. It came back within a matter of 2 minutes, and it was like on a tape loop. It wouldn't stop.
Right.
I just broke down and cried. I thought I had to be going insane because nobody could ever forget something like that, and yet I had. Of course, as the years passed, I learned how sadly common this is in much more conventional human trauma, sexual abuse, murder, all the terrible things that happen to people that they can't deal with until they can deal with it.
Let's take our break right here. Our guest tonight, the one and only Peter Robbins. I am your host, Jimmy Church. What a great conversation. Like I said, we've got work to do. We're going to get it done. Peter Robbins is our guest. This is Fade to Black. Stay with us.
Hi everybody, this is Rob Halford, the Metal Guard on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station. Salt Lake City, Utah. Van Buren, Arkansas.
Why is it we're not very good with our health regimen until it's too late? We don't put oil in the car until the engine blows up. When the body's out of balance, your health is not so good. Give your body some love. Log on to GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com. Try our Life Change Tea, which cleanses you from harmful intruders. A clean colon is one of the ways to bring the body in balance. We also carry organic supplements to help you get where you need to go. So do your body a favor. Log on to GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com. You can even visit our sales page to save some dough. Does anybody call money dough anymore? Anyway, if you're looking for short, helpful health tips, go to YouTube and punch in Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now. So, log on to getthetea.com, shop, get balanced, then learn some cool tips at Health Matters Now. You'll be glad you did. That's getthetea.com.
Your contact for current news and trending topics. KGRAradio.com.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I only drink Fade to Black blend coffee from Rivermoon. Just click on the Rivermoon Coffee banner at jimmychurchradio.com. Promo code F2B Blend.
This is the only way forward.
This is Fade to Black. Make contact. KGRAradio.com.
When you're in the house for longer periods of time, you can see them flying or running across the floor. Ooh, yuck. They're unhealthy, gross, and disgusting. Bugs. I loathe bugs. We keep a clean home, but occasionally bugs show up. Well, I found something that is tougher than bugs. Orange Guard. On contact, it kills hidden bugs, including ants, roaches, and fleas. Plus, Orange Guard is a residual repellent. All of the ingredients of Orange Guard are on the FDA generally recognized as safe list. Orange Guard may be used around food, humans, and pets. It comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Orange Guard, available at orangeguard.com, Whole Foods, and Ace Hardware.
Gold loves chaos, uncertainty, and disarray. History shows us what gold does when people aren't sure about the government, the stock market, their jobs, or their retirement savings. Our national debt is skyrocketing. Gold and other precious metals are a defense measure against inflation and a stock market that might take years to recover. So what can you do right now to protect yourself? Call United Gold Group. We offer gold and other precious metals delivered securely within 72 hours. Are you worried about the stock market? We can also help you set up a real gold or silver IRA or a 401k. Safe and secure. United Gold Group makes gold ownership affordable. Call now and get up to $2,500 in free gold or silver with a qualified IRA. Call 800-753-8534. That's 800-753-8534 or visit unitedgoldgroup.com.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why Fade to Black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
Welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. On the Game Changer Network and KGRA, the planet. Our guest tonight, Peter Robbins. And this is great, Peter, because I've known you for a long time. We've talked a lot. We've spent way too much time on the phone, by the way. These are subjects that you and I have never talked about. And I really, this is what Fade to Black is. Just a free form conversation. And it's funny. Peter broke all of my rules and, sent me some interesting, and I didn't read the email, Peter. I was like, man, I'm not going to poison my mind. I'm not going to do this. I'm just not going to do it. And look where we got, right? And now, I want to back up. Oh, by the way, children of men. It's weird how it comes back. And you know what? It took me about
5 minutes to get to Clive Owen, too. I was listening to you, but my brain is like working. And
it's a great story, but it's a brilliant book. And without ruining it, I will say the premise is, again, nobody has been born on Earth for like 22 years. Populations are aging out. Some countries are going totally dystopic on each other. England, Great Britain is holding together, not because of the royal family, they're a non-entity, not because of Parliament or the Prime Minister, they don't really exist anymore, but because of the leader. And we're seeing this all through the eyes of a retired Oxford professor who happens to be the cousin of the leader, hasn't seen him for years. And then one day we learn a woman is pregnant. And the story takes off like a rocket from there.
But let me. I got to step on you. No, now I'm going to step on you. I watched that movie like 2 or 3 times. First off, I love Clive Owen. He's great, right?
Yeah, he is.
And I kept saying to myself, "There's an important story here, but I'm just not getting it." And then I went and I read a review of the movie and that it was based on this book and what the movie was about. I was like, man, how did I miss that like 3 times? And that's an example of the book is better than the movie. The movie wasn't even close and brilliantly shot, well acted, but
totally perfect locations. Everything just right.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so off of Clive Owen though. Okay, let's move off of that. So today, where we are right now versus your hero's journey to get to this point, did it, and I'm talking about UFOs, the media, the Pentagon, the Senate Intelligence Committee, Lou Elizondo, whatever you want to bring up, Ralph Blumenthal.
Yeah.
Did you think that it took too long? Or are you surprised that we are where we are today?
I think it took as long as it took, and I'm not surprised. I thought sooner or later we'd get here. At the same time, for 40 years, every, let's say 5 or 6 years, there's a rumor, there's a buzz, there's something about to bust through. You remember when that extraordinary Walt Disney documentary came out in the 90s, I think in the Clinton administration. This was mind-blowing. I mean, it wasn't a Walt Disney fantasy. It was, we are doing a documentary on why you need to get ready for the fact that UFOs, their occupants, the implications for humanity are real. And it opened with Michael Eisner, the CEO of Walt Disney at the time, setting it up. And I thought, damn, if Disney's doing this, and we all know the Clintons are interested in this, this might be it. Of course, it wasn't. There's always been the contraction, the letdown, and, it wasn't going to happen. But what's happening right now for me is, number one, the traditional secret keeping, the methodology of doing it. It's swamp gas. It's fear of alien invasion, going back to how everybody reacted in 1938, listening to Orson Welles' wonderful War of the Worlds, which, by the way, you should listen to. It's an extraordinary radio play. And to think of a simpler America, listening to it on the eve of World War II, and so many people buying it, but it had commercials, and it collapsed weeks into, one radio show. The power of Howard Koch, the radio writer, and the Mercury Theater of the Air was very compelling. What we're seeing now, I think, is the narrative has gotten away from the traditional secret keepers. They can't tell us it's swamp gas anymore. What they can do is manage the show. And the big report that came out in June, well, if you're not an insider, but you're like you or me and you keep up with this stuff and you are knowledgeable relatively on the subject, Shakespeare nailed it as Much Ado About Nothing. It could be the Chinese, it could be the Russians, and who knows? It just might be something, dare we say it, really exotic. Of course, the odds are against it. Well, that report, as far as I'm concerned, and we'll see, I'm not good at predicting, but I think I've got this one right, will be followed by other reports, probably several a year, each one managed and of course, completely constructed. They know everything we know and more. It's going to be like, we have done more research and we have analyzed, this frame of the Tic Tac or this, that, and the other thing, and we have more Navy pilots coming forward. We've just recovered this document. They'll keep it going as long as they can. What they will never touch willingly is the exotic stuff. Back-engineered technology, crash retrievals, abductions, missing pregnancies, hybrids. They'd rather die. It won't happen. I am interested, though, as most of us are, in what the unredacted version of the report is and what's percolating away in the minds of the hundreds of people, members of Congress, presidential cabinet, key people in the Pentagon, key people in the military-industrial complex, key people around the world who are now looking at it and saying, wow, this thing that the public hasn't seen, this is really intriguing. Maybe there really is something more to this. I know now there is. Coupled with the fact that since 2017 and a series of articles that came out in the Times, and then the Spirit and the Actuality was picked up by other major media, and it didn't start actually with that terrific pair of articles by Leslie Kean and Ralph Blumenthal and the other Times staff writer in December. It started some months before when Ralph Blumenthal took a trip up to Syracuse, New York, and interviewed the UFO statistician Cheryl Costa. That didn't get the play that the December articles did, but the Times took it seriously. You are talking to probably the only person you will ever speak to who was crazy enough over the years to download, originally analog, copying machines, microfiche, and then digital, every article, every commentary, every editorial, every letter to the editor, and every photo caption that the Times ever published regarding flying saucers, unidentified aerial discs, UFOs, UAPs. 230-odd pieces over 70-odd years that I then put together and read and reread in order. I'm trained as an artist. I think out of the box. And I knew if I kept doing it, I'd see a pattern, whether it was a caption or a small report on page 16 from 1954, or they went out of their minds in 1952 with the Washington, D.C. overflights. One day they had 7 articles, and they were all, can't be, therefore it isn't, could have been this. Once again, Shakespeare, methinks the lady doth protest too much.
Right.
And all of a sudden they turn around. And isn't it interesting, whatever your political beliefs or affiliations or feelings, it doesn't matter whether you go to Fox or CNBC or this incredibly conservative website or this incredibly liberal website, everybody is giving UFOs respect. There are exceptions, but that coupled with the fact that this was a career killer for politicians, for scientists, for astronomers, for any kind of professional, for teachers, academia hated it.
Entertainers,
That's it.
Journalists, newscasters, radio hosts.
Correct.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes.
What concerns me right now is something that somebody posted in some feed that I read a few weeks ago. It was just one sentence, and it hit me. It was, for most people, the whole UFO thing is entertainment. I thought, wait, what? And I thought, you watch very little UFO television. A lot of people in the field watch lots of it, and I know there's good stuff. But it's been so deeply ingrained into our popular culture, into the world of films, into the world of advertising, which has been another research specialty of mine, that for most people, and many people in the field who would have been called researchers and investigators years ago, are now essentially entertainers. And I thought, this is the way that the world is moving. Everybody that's in it wants to keep the attention and wants to keep the attention on themselves. I joked with a number of colleagues, well-known colleagues, not that long ago about the scramble that would happen when this process started to happen, where, whether you're Wolf Blitzer or what's the schnook with the bow tie on Fox?
Tucker.
There you go. That they were going to essentially emerge as the true spokesman of UFO scholarship because they had studied it for the past year, and leaving all the people that had been doing the grunt work for, decades kind of in the dust. And a lot of us take that personally. We worked hard to get some acknowledgement, and here, is it possible we're going to be left behind? Which one of us is going to emerge as the one they really want to hear?
Right.
And I can laugh at it because I could care less. I will always have my own modest audience. I will always have something to say that I hope will be of value and importance. I know how to communicate and use language in a way that's effective and to tell a story truly that is done in a manner that can hold people's attention. We all remember a favorite teacher in high school, high school, college, elementary school. They were the one that inspired us to do this, that, or the other thing. How did they do it? They knew their work. They were enthusiastic about it. They loved the subject they taught, but they knew how to do it in a way that was entertaining. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the difference between that and certain people I won't name who are essentially functioning as entertainers in the UFO business, and some of them doing quite well at it, is not the same thing. And that's something we have to be wary of as we move forward into what I think will be a more and more acceleratingly exciting time where so many people that could have, well, put it this way, over the past 10 years, so many people who could have cared less in the past what other people think about what they think about UFOs now are very verbal about it. I hear from people I knew in elementary school, junior high school, people from all parts of my life who have been contacting me more and more the last 2 or 3 years. I've been following your work, or I came upon this thing and I wonder if it was the same Peter Robbins. You've really been into this long, and I read your article, or I saw you on this show, or I read and I'm interested now, and I'm learning about it, and I'm listening to shows. I went to a conference. This can't be bad.
Now, as quick as it ramped up from, we can point to December 2017.
Yep.
But there were other things that were, going on at the same time, but the ramp up was quick. It was deliberate, and the mainstream media was suddenly on our side.
Yeah.
But now, over the last month, it seems like it's gone away. And don't you find that interesting?
Very interesting. It's like a wave came in the Bay of Fundy and went all the way up to beyond the shoreline and then receded back miles and is taking its time coming in again. One can possibly attribute it to a sensibility of, we're kind of on overload on this. Let's cut back on our UFO coverage. Everybody's been blasted with it for the last year. We'll come back on it, but let's see how they're reacting now and start to cover other things. Or that there is a quiet, concerted effort to look over there, folks, not over here.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be a paranoid to know that somebody's following you, a phrase I love. And I am not a conspiracist.
Wow,
I don't see, men in black behind every tree.
Hold on, repeat that.
Time,
Peter.
You and I know history
Peter.
is defined by conspiracies.
Peter, repeat that. You don't have to be paranoid to...
You don't have to be paranoid to know that someone is following you.
Okay. I just stole that. That's
English professor of mine, night school at NYU.
Okay, so I don't have to give him credit. I can just keep this as my own.
Some years ago. I don't think he'll be on your case.
Man, that is just awesome. That is mine. I'm going to make a T-shirt. Thank you, Peter. But yeah, and see, the thing is, and you just said it, so elegantly, that we shouted for years for attention. We finally get the attention. That, to me, felt strange. It was like our little private fun zone is now public, right? Okay, so now it's and now it's pulled back, and now I'm angry about that, too. Right? It's like...
sometimes you got to go with the philosophers. As Tony Soprano would say, what are you going to do?
What are you going to do about it? And now... What can we do? How do we get our foot back on the gas?
I think what we can do is what we do at our best, which is continue to put forward quality information in a way that people want to hear it. And it's, all of us, the way I see it, we're not showmen, showwomen, we're educators. But education, the word is boring in itself. But that's what we're all about. I've worked for decades, wherever possible, to couch whatever project I'm self-developing, because with the rare exceptions of taking on a commission or an assignment, I find stories, projects that really interest me, and that's the drive mechanism. And almost all of them are well couched in post-war 20th century history, citing all of the historic details and players around the story that I'm trying to tell, so that a rational skeptic, and we should all be rational skeptics, who could care less about the subject in part because they and their parents and sometimes their grandparents were conditioned not to take it seriously, will say, this one interests me enough that I can get them into the allegorical foyer and leave it to other colleagues to get them into the living room. But for me, it's about educating people in a way that they'll listen to. And after a while, you get to know your own voice and where it works and where it doesn't. So we all need to keep doing what we're doing. You need to do what I'm doing, and that you're doing anyway, which is have interesting guests who are worthy of our respect and yet can hold your attention for 2 or 3 hours. You know my format on most of my shows. It's so many of the people that are colleagues of ours, friends of ours, some of the best known and most respected people internationally in UFO and paranormal research. What I do differently, thinking I want everybody in your audience, everybody that listens to Coast, everybody that listens to the smallest podcast, but the audience I want most are the people that have never listened to this stuff before. The way that I'm trying to ameliorate this and make it work for everybody is I bring somebody on, usually who we all know. We, in that small group of us that are the choir and are preached to, and say, we know who you are. We think we do. We've read your books. We've seen you in documentaries. We've watched you at conferences. You've signed our books. But how did you become the person you are? And give them a full 2 hours to tell their life story. And it's working. And I have been bowled over. A lot of people at the highest levels of the game have said, nobody ever asked me to do that before. And on they come. It's amazing the lineup that I've had. I am so grateful to all these wonderful people who have come on, and some of them have had extraordinary courage in talking about things that none of us ever knew about them. I mean, tragedies that they've surmounted, extraordinary things that they have gone through, how they got inspired, that mixture of shock, sadness, hysterically funny stuff, fascinating stuff that's the fabric of our lives, that they weave together, almost always fully illustrated, with photos they supply me and photos that I find to help us tell their story. And then at the end, I'm also there to help them sell their books and their documentaries and where they're going to be next. I mean, these are people I care about. We're all in this together. I don't see any of us really in competition. It's just my attitude, but it works. We are all in this together, and we need to support each other's work and keep doing it at a high quality.
What do you think about, you and I aren't going to be around forever, and it's
what?
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny how you get to a certain age and then you start to realize how precious life is, right? You really do. But what do you think about some of these youngsters that we're passing the torch to? Pretty impressive.
Yes, it is. 10 years ago, I was concerned. Where is this next generation coming from? And then they started to appear. I think it was 8 or 9 years ago that I got a call from a guy in New York that I had some things in common with in terms of my life that I lived in off-Broadway theater and my theater training, as well as an interest in ufology, who asked me to mentor him. And we'd meet for breakfast once a month and talk. And he grew up to become Ryan Sprague. And a guy I met at a conference who is certainly my contemporary gave a talk about a woman who had worked at Wright-Patterson, who was privy to information. Her name was June Crane, and this man's name was James Clarkson, one of the finest investigators I've ever known and one of the nicest people. And he asked me the same thing. And boy, Jim is out there now. I am so proud of being of assistance, The same way that when I was next to nobody, I had one major cachet. I was Bud Hopkins' assistant. Okay, I had that. But when I contacted people like Timothy Good out of the blue, and he wrote me back on his beautiful stationery and signed those letters with a fountain pen and encouraged me to do the work. And when we finally met, Tim was a very fine violinist and violist and a session musician who not only worked for years with the London Philharmonic, but worked with every favorite rocker you can imagine. And where did he ask me to meet him? At Abbey Road Studios.
Oh, that rocks.
I met George Martin that day. I got to go listen to him and a 50-piece orchestra score a Spanish film. And it was in, I think, Studio 7, where they did All You Need Is Love. Stanton Friedman in 87, when I asked him, I told him that his talk on Donald K. Menzel, The Secret Life of Donald K. Menzel, was the finest piece of research I had ever heard given in a lecture, and that's what I wanted to do. And he helped me to get started at that point in doing that. Other people as well. Pay it forward. I am happy to be an asset for somebody that would like some assistance. I think I would have written a lot more books if I hadn't spent so much of my time working with other people. But you know what? That's fine too. I could care less.
Now, in the short time that we have left, I'm not going to let this go, and I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't circle back.
Uh-oh.
The new book, you described it as organic. Why?
Because the writing process is being determined by where my interest is at the moment. Now that it's, let me say it this way. When I was trained as a painter, and I started out in very traditional forms and as an art student in New York at a time when many of my fellow students were already getting into their adult work, I was doing something that was almost embarrassing for my teachers. I was recreating in the manner of Picasso's Blue Period or Seurat's Pointillist paintings, or seeing what it was like to paint part of a Gauguin or a Cézanne, just to see what it felt like to do it. And part of the process, if you're working in a pointillist manner, which I did for about a year, you're doing this with a brush. You're making thousands of dots on a canvas. And after a while, you're going into something of an altered state because of this thing that's happening in front of you. But when you really start going at it, part of the enjoyment is I'm working over here with a medium cerulean blue, and I'm looking over there and I'm saying, I could put an orange dot over there. That's going to look really cool in terms of that. I'll do that. I'm really looking forward to that. And just go to it. Once you've got a manuscript that's starting to take shape, and it now is at a point where it's past that point where you're having to really push to make it something. It's now at that tipping point, and it has a life of its own. Now you can go back into chapter 3 and flush out those 3 paragraphs there, jump to chapter 7, work on that, stop, work on notes for footnoting that you're going to have to do, a researcher that you want to contact about a detail in this particular aspect of it. That's what I mean by organic, rather than you sit down and you mechanically, I'm going to finish this goddamn chapter right now because I'm going to finish it, even though I'm not enjoying what I'm doing right now. Why did I start to write in the first place? There was some enjoyment to it, wasn't there?
Right.
It's sometimes the case with great art and great writers. You get stuck having to produce a product that's being expected of you, and you've lost that, I won't say childlike, but that the pure joy of the creative process happening under your own hand in one way or another. That's what I mean by organic.
I don't want to end this conversation, so we're going to keep going. We're doing overtime, Peter. This was not an ending. We've got to come up with the right sentence
No,
at
you're right.
the end
It
of the
wasn't an ending.
at the end of the paragraph. So let's take a break right here. We'll be right back. Peter Robbins, overtime. But again, you saw this coming. This is Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. You can follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Email is jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. All of Peter's links are over at jimmychurchradio.com. And always remember, Peter opens up for Fade to Black every Monday night here on KGRA. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Vivica Fox here, and you are listening to my boy, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I take Life Change Tea supplements every single day. It's what I do. Click on their banner at jimmychurchradio.com. This is Jimmy Church, and I invite you to attend the 20th Annual Los Angeles Conscious Life Expo live and in person this September 17th, 18th, and 19th at the LAX Airport Hilton. Connect with exhibitors, community, thought leaders, and friends as we begin to recreate the world. You can also watch the expo from the comfort of your own home. Live stream from the main stage in Los Angeles and from the main stage in London. Truly a global simulcast event broadcast around the world. Live stream and in-person expo tickets are available now. I'll be your host all weekend long from Los Angeles. And on Friday, it's my Ancient Secrets and Earth Mysteries themed segment with James Keenan, Caroline Corey, and William Henry. And on Saturday, Daniel Sheen and I sit down for a one-on-one interview live. We have an amazing lineup of 25 speakers, including Bashar, Gail Thackeray, Kimberly Meredith, Whitley Strieber, Stephen Bassett, Daniel Brinkley, and Lisa Garr. Please visit ConsciousLifeExpo.com for tickets and info. That's ConsciousLifeExpo.com and use that promo code Jimmy for a special discount. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Yes, River Moon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2B Blend for 15% off of your order today.
This is Billy Carson with ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Forbidden Knowledge TV has just reached its 1-year anniversary. That's right, 1 year. And as a show of appreciation, we are giving all new subscribers a free 30-day trial of ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. That's 30 days to binge watch thousands of movies, documentaries, conferences, workshops, lectures, yoga classes, meditation courses, and so much more. So log on to ForbiddenKnowledge.tv from your computer or mobile device, or get the Forbidden Knowledge TV app on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon, iTunes, or Google Play today, and use coupon code 30daysfree. That's coupon code 30 days free on ForbiddenKnowledge.tv today.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Erica, Brittany, Gabby, and you're listening to JChurchRadio.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRARadio.com.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. There's a reason why this is the greatest show in all of talk radio in all of the world. It's guests like Peter Robbins. What a great conversation tonight on the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet. We are heading into overtime. And Peter, when I get into overtime, normally what I like to do is remove some stress. But we haven't stressed out tonight. So, but now I'm going to catch you off guard. Okay? All right? I guarantee you've never been asked this question before. Best pizza in Manhattan. I love that reaction. He's like, what?
Say, what kind of pizza? And you're just talking about Manhattan.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't. I'm telling you right now.
There
the
is
question
a place.
is the
it's
best.
a hole in the wall
Yes.
off of Waverly Place. I don't remember the name. It's a slice place.
Mm-hmm.
It's $2 a slice, and it's phenomenal. It's just about the best pizza I have ever had in a classic thin slice, not too much tomato sauce, just the right amount of cheese, very thin, very crispy crust.
But how can we send?
You don't order two slices. You want to order them one at a time, so they're each equally hot when you get them. I'm damned if I remember the name of it right now, but it's off of Waverly Place, and it's right at about the 6th Avenue cutoff. Good luck finding it.
Okay, last time I was in New York, I think we were on 36th, in between 6th and 7th. Okay. And so we take off, make a right. We crossed right in front of Madison Square Garden, right? So we walk in front of Madison Square, make a right. We cross the street, and we're going up. And I was like, man, I want pizza. Looked across the street. Now, Madison Square Garden is to my right. I can see it, right? Okay. And then now the buildings are starting. Right? And there's a pizza place. Doesn't matter. We go back, cross the street, walk in, just, nobody pointing us in the direction of good pizza. Walked in, got a slice, sat down, took a bite. This was my reaction.
The top of your mouth
it was
burned beyond recognition.
It was so delicious. Right? And it was like it was insane. It was insane. It was like this.
There are so many small mom and pop shops still around New York City, thank God.
It's just let's go there. And that was the decision. And that's what happens in New York. And I just don't get it. I don't get it. Now, next question.
Yeah.
New York has got the best museums in the world.
Well,
period.
It certainly has some of them.
Right? Okay. But the Met, when you go into the Met, exactly, right? When you go into the Met, do you go right or left, or do you go up the stairs?
I've been there so often since I was a kid.
Right.
To the left is Greek and Roman.
Yep.
And Mediterranean. To the right, of course, you're going into the Egyptian tombs. Straight up the stairs, you're going into 10th century Asian pottery on the right, and on the left, heading into the painting section. It's what the mood strikes me at the time, or what I need a hit of. And you've hit me in the heart here. This is one of my favorite places on the entire planet Earth.
That's right.
And it elevates the soul. It makes the spirit soar. If you just walk in and just keep walking straight back on the right, you hit the medieval armor section, which I remember as a little boy, and I remember Last time I was there about a year and a half ago plus as a big boy.
Right.
Great art never dies. And I feel kind of wistful sometimes for people that weren't as fortunate as I was to be brought up in and near New York City and had parents, and my dad's parents who lived in Manhattan, my mom's parents lived in Queens, learned different things from both of them. But from the time before I can remember, my grandparents were taking me to the Met, to the beloved Museum of Natural History, even to the Museum of Modern Art, to the Fire Department Museum, to the Museum of the City of New York. I fell in love with museums as a little boy, and I will go to almost any museum anywhere and just find a way to have a great time. One of the most sobering museums now in New York City in the world is the one on the site of the original Trade Center. You see a modern structure and you think that's it. That's just the foyer and the entranceway. It's something like, I don't know how many 100,000 feet underground. Not hundreds of thousands of feet, but the floor space. You know, you see the fire engines that were squashed down to the width of, a wastebasket. You see every artifact imaginable. And I don't want to wax too much on this, but I love New York. It's my favorite place to be. I don't live there now. I live out in the countryside in central New York State, but I am for the past 30-odd years, a specialty New York City walking tour guide, whether it's corporate clients, old friends, couples from, Sweden or wherever, or the Midwest. We design walking tours and we do it until their feet fall off. It's the history of the United States is caught up in New York City as much or more as it is in Boston or Philadelphia or any of the original East Coast, 13 colonies locations. I never get tired of it. The Museum of the Outdoors of some of the greatest architecture of, the 19th and 20th century is right there around you every time. I walk down streets there that I've walked down 800, 1,000 times, like a tourist looking for some architectural detail that I've missed on my first 1,000 walks. I love the city. And I can't separate that interest from other interests. Interests feed each other in a very real way. I love the museums in London. I love museums in small towns. When I was a little boy, about 7 years old, I made a museum in our front room, and then it had to get moved down to the basement. It had a stuffed squirrel with a nut in its mouth that my grandfather had given me, much to my mother's chagrin. Lots of bugs with pins in them, rocks, minerals, coins from other countries, different types of butterflies, bark from trees. I love that stuff. But I love the sensibility. It's kind of, the Smithsonian, America's Attic. You could go there every day for a year and not see everything. There are so many remarkable museums on the National Mall. You could, rent a flat in Washington and just go to museums for 6 months and not duplicate anything.
Yeah.
But for some people, especially an art museum, I don't get modern art, so I don't I feel uncomfortable in museums because I love nature. Well, you can love nature and love culture. And for me, that is one of the great wrestling matches that thoughtful people have for their whole life. Do I want to put myself in a natural surrounding and visit cultural places, or live in the middle of a big, bustling, wonderful city and take breaks and head out into the countryside? It's not the worst problem to have. But if you're the kind of person that feels uncomfortable in museums, go on, break the mold. Just go. Enjoy what you can. That notion of I've got to take the spare time and the luxury to learn about this stuff to appreciate it more, not necessarily. Something beautiful or meaningful is beautiful or meaningful. And something incredibly simple that my kid could do it, it has a deeper meaning. And whatever you feel it is just as legitimate as what the artist felt, what some posh art critic thought about it, what a curator felt about it.
Yeah, and one of this is like my fondest memory that I've constantly repeated, and it's always great, is I go to the Met, go up those stairs, walk in, do my thing for 2 hours, 3 hours, till my feet are sore, walk back out, down to a food truck, get a hot dog and a Coke, go sit on the stairs until my feet, and look, right? And just look out and look at it, all the people.
Beautiful Fifth Avenue.
Fifth Avenue. And sit there, eat the hot dog, your feet are better, and then you go back in, right?
Yes.
And you do that maybe 2 times, right?
Yeah, that's about
right.
it. I used to think of it in the old days, that the penny, you got to put a penny in the fuse box. It's like you're a 4-year-old on your 3rd hour in the Met. It doesn't matter what you see. It's not getting through. You've got to take a break. Or you can walk behind the museum and sit by the Alice in Wonderland statue, or just look at the beautiful trees there and remember that Calvin Vaux and I'm forgetting the name of the man who literally designed Central Park. It was 2 men working together, and I'll think of it in a moment. But every tree was placed where it is consciously. A lot of people think that they just put up, a stone gate 2.5 miles by half a mile, 844 acres, and that's Central Park. Everything was created, was nuanced. Hills were flattened out. Swamps were filled. Frederick Laws Olmsted, who is the father of landscape architecture, what they did just starting after the Civil War is just one of the great social accomplishments of all time. And Vaux went on, and Olmsted went on to design over 500 other parks, estates, municipal, finery. What New York City would be without that park, none of us can even imagine who love New York. It's the heart and soul. It's the place where hardcore New Yorkers, they actually think it's nature. I mean,
it's bigger than
Yorker,
people.
But I know
it's bigger than people think. It is. Central Park is ginormous. And I can't tell you how many times, I've stayed at like the Hilton Towers, right? Mm-hmm. And then just head up 7th and walk into Central Park.
Yeah.
And walk for like 2 hours.
Yeah.
And think, man, I'm getting tired. I got to turn around. And then you look at the plaza, and you're like, I haven't even dented this place. Right.
Also, well, that's it. These 2 visionaries planned out something that they knew was not going to become fully operational in terms of tree growth for 100 years. And you can almost any place in the park stop and do a 360 and say, this is uncanny. It's like watching one of the great films, and every frame is perfectly composed. That's not an accident. That's an act of love. It's an act of art. It's an act of tremendous hard work. Thousands of laborers, many of them Black, many of them Irish, spend their lives working, creating that extraordinary work of art unto itself. But yeah, the Metropolitan Museum of Art has got to be one of the great locations in the world. Take your kids if you go to New York. Go yourself. Go every chance you can. It's a museum's museum. Again, the British Museum, the Los Angeles Museum, the Rock and Roll Museum in Cleveland. It's wonderful. It's one of the things that you should take in life. And if you are a serious student of UFOs and you feel you're betraying your profession by taking time to read a Clive Cussler novel or a Robert Ludlum novel or a history of this subject or that, or go to a museum, you should be working on your UFO stuff. Lighten the F up and just enjoy yourself sometimes. Many of us get overly serious in this work because it's a damn serious subject.
It is.
And it deserves the respect that it has at its best. But It's a wonderful old Sicilian proverb. It's so beautiful in Italian, but it translates as living well is the best revenge. And wherever you can, for me, for all of us, it doesn't matter how old you are. Every moment should count. And kindness, which is how I close my show, fight for what you believe in. There's another thing first. Stand up for what you believe in, end it by saying, and be kind to each other. I'm not always kind to people, especially people who are a-holes. I will shut them down. But wherever possible, be kind, because so many people are suffering inside, and that was us at another time. We are all in this together. Kindness matters, and it's certainly not something that lessens your ability to do your work in UFO studies. For me, I think the greatest thing that I've gotten out of this, and I've gotten beyond that point of, gee, I hope before I die I find out where they come from and how their machines run and get to look at one and see an alien, suspended in fluid and, read the government documents that, are deeply, deeply classified. It'll happen, it won't happen. What interests me most for some years now is the impact of this subject on the lives of human beings. On Monday, I did something on my show that you know about just 2 nights ago, which was quietly historic. I don't think anybody in broadcasting of any sort has ever done it before. I had a panel discussion of 5 guests, all women, all mothers, all experiencers and or UFO abductees who are very active in the field. And those 2 hours were remarkable, so much so that I'm going to come back to that every couple of months. Usually a panel discussion on a UFO-related show is a bunch of guys, and occasionally a woman. But I'm a feminist, I think, in the best sense of the word. I grew up with that core message in life being women are the best. Love women, have them be your friends. You can't do any better. I know I identify a lot more with lesbians than my gay friends. Nothing against any of my gay friends who I love, but why would anybody want to be with a guy when they can be with a woman? I know that's going to upset a few people, but I'll just say it here. And this show was wonderful. And by the end of the show, and I mean, we had some extraordinary, we had Deb White-Cabell, we had Kathleen Martin, Denise Stoner,
NK
Cranda,
yep.
and Tiffany Mack.
Yep.
And these women hauled ass. I mean, they talked about stuff, and the next show, a slightly different combination will be coming on, and they will pick up where these amazing women left off. Abduction is a very important subject, and it's the core subject I think we need to try to normalize with the largest amount of people who are interested in the UFO phenomena. It's the most difficult, most complex, most intimidating, terrifying, upsetting, paradigm shifting event in, human perception history.
Well, let me ask you this, Peter. This is one of the things that maybe we should have talked about it earlier, and we've only got about 5 minutes. But this, the government being our best friend right now when it comes to UFOs, right? Okay, all right. But it is from a very focused military point of view. We're not hearing, why do you expect the government to continue this openness and talk about abductions and talk about these other things that the civilian population is going through?
I think, first of all, the openness is a completely staged openness. And being the government run by primarily very powerful white guys, like it's always been, who have big egos and don't ever want to look like they're not as strong and powerful and masculine as they are. And once you admit that we're not alone in the universe, that there are other intelligences that run circles around us technologically in terms of their powers to influence us, cloud our minds, control our perceptions,
right,
and maybe 1 million years ahead of us, or 50,000, who knows? It's arbitrary.
Mm-hmm.
I think that insecurity, people talk about national security. At the baseline, it's really national insecurity that these guys are caught up in. And it's the nature of armored man, so to say, in the ergonomic Reichian term, to think in terms of defense and aggression. In the meantime, yes, people are traumatized by these events, but equally, if not more and more people are coming forward over the last year saying, the experience I had upon reflection was transcendent. I learned things from it. I'm not afraid of these beings, these intelligences that I interface with, and we're asking the wrong questions. Are they good or are they bad? Forget about that. They're doing what they're doing for their own reasons. What we need to remember is the greatest likelihood is we're dealing with a myriad of other intelligences from different locations in the physical cosmos, from different dimensions, just as likely.
Mm-hmm.
One of each whom's sitting right next to you and me right now, enjoying this conversation as much as we are. They're just not corporeal.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them may well mean us well. And many of them, I would imagine, there is concern about the terrible job we are doing being good shepherds of our own home. What it comes down to is Blue Oyster Cult had a wonderful song years ago called I Am the One You Warned Me Of. We are the ones we warned us of. We are the infestation. We are the problem. A lot of it has to do with population, which of course, you mentioned a word about birth control or population, and you sound like a Nazi. We have bred ourselves crazy, and we're now paying the price. It's feeding into climate change. For me, what it comes down to is if we collectively, and we'll hit a tipping point, hopefully at some point, where more people than not absolutely see themselves first because of an understanding that we're not alone and there are other intelligences as human beings, rather than Americans or Christians or Muslims or Jews or black or white or Asian or other subdivisions, men or women. It will threaten nationalism, which governments don't like, but it will make us potentially come together in a way that we never have before, not necessarily out of fear of the unknown of these other beings, but because we're ready to take the step. I do believe that there are ones that are malevolent, and I am sure there are ones that are beneficent. We can't live our lives in fear around them. We should be living full, enjoyable lives, helping other people as we go, doing good, leaving our little corner of the earth a little better than we found it, and at the same time have the courage to stand up for what we believe in whenever it confronts us.
Yeah, because it's very simple. If we go and we meet and some extraterrestrial civilization, some ETC says, Peter, what are you? You're not going to say, well, I'm an American. You're going to say I'm an Earthling. What would that mean I'm a Canadian? What does that mean? We are certainly immature if we approach it that way. We are Earthlings. And then really that's it. That's it. And nothing more. Peter, thank you so much, my friend. What a great conversation. And let's not wait a few years to the next time.
Good enough.
All right.
I'll be happy to return as long as I get paid the same amount I'm getting this time.
Check's in the mail. Check your PayPal.
Outstanding.
I'll talk to you, Peter. Have a great night. Thank you so much, brother. Man. Peter Robbins. Again, all of Peter's information is over at jimmychurchradio.com. What a great conversation. Thank you, Peter, for doing overtime with us. And I got to get straight to the credits. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee, Dennis, and Kevin. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vitoa, Mark D. Kovar. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network, and syndication is KGRA, The Planet. This broadcast only copyrighted 2021 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. What are we? Where are we this week? Tomorrow night's Fader Night. It's open lines all night long. So until then, I want everybody to be safe. It's time to fade to black.